forest looking for some exciting images of birds. Let's just see what we can get. Hello, Dan.
Morning, Paul. How's it going?
Well, it's morning for you. It's afternoon for me.
Yeah, morning for me, afternoon for you. That's true. Well, happy belated Merry Christmas. I hope you had a good time.
Yeah, yourself?
Yeah, it wasn't bad. I was sick in bed. It was great.
Oh, right. That's really nice, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a little annoying, but I think I had that new COVID strain. I was in bed for like 2.5 weeks.
Right.
Very annoying.
Right.
But finally better. Hoping for a good party tonight for New Year's.
Yeah, so I hope you have a good time.
I hope so. How about you? Any parties planned?
No, it's just me on my own.
Yeah, that sounds nice and relaxed, actually.
Billy no mates me.
Oh.
I did reach out to Alan.
Yeah?
Apparently he's in church, so he can't attend.
Well then.
Yeah. I've actually reached out to Marshall.
Yeah.
He's got an interesting surname, Goldberg.
Yeah.
He's not quite as big as Goldberg.
No. And I'm not sure if he plays hockey.
Really?
I don't know. Never asked him.
Right. Yeah, I'm just waiting for him to come on, really. So what have you been up to in the photography world at the moment? Been doing much?
Well, I played around with my, for me, new 135mm f2.0, taking a couple nice, really blurry background eye pictures of our horses. I posted a couple in the group. I think you've seen them. Yeah. And today, actually, I have a photo shoot scheduled this afternoon in my barn with our horses and a couple friends, where we do those black background shots I posted about a year ago as well. And we're going to do a couple more of those today.
Right. I noticed you got a 70-200.
Yes, I treated myself to a little birthday gift earlier in October, and purchased the Canon 70-200 2.8 L IS USM Mark III. Got a really good deal on Amazon, actually. It was a refurb, and it was literally only like a little over $240 more than a Mark II. So I figured, why not go for the Mark III for even better flare reduction?
Yeah, there's not much difference between the two.
No, it's just the coating on the front lens, which is a little bit better with ghosting and flares. But other than that, there's no difference whatsoever.
Yeah, I think Tony Northrup did the test comparison between the two.
Yeah, I think so. I think I watched that.
I think he said it's not worth the extra unless you can, like yourself have got a good deal on the newer model, you know.
Yeah, and this is a refurb on Amazon with full warranty and all the parts and everything that belongs to it. Pretty much a brand new lens for only $240 more than the Mark III. I figured, why not?
Good. Obviously, there's a lot of photography things that have been going off recently in the world. What's your take on the 24-105 2.8?
If I had a mirrorless camera, I would sell whatever it takes to be able to buy one.
$3,000, basically.
Yep, fine by me. For that lens, fine by me. I would pay that. It's an amazing focal length. It's pretty much a walk around, never leaves the body lens type.
Yeah.
And now with the 2.8 aperture, there's really no need for 24-70mm 2.8 anymore.
I think the only thing that might put people off is the size and the weight of it. That's the only thing.
But I lug around a Sigma 120-300. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Well, for example, if you've got limited space in your camera bag, and you've only got space like for a big lens and then a small lens, you might find it quite restrictive because you're thinking, how am I going to fit that lens in the bag, because
it's true, but it's about the size of a 70-200, which in my case I still consider a rather small lens. So
it'd be interesting to see how sharp it is in the corners, because
definitely.
I have
to see some reviews.
Yeah, I have noticed a theme running through the RF zoom lenses where they're not that great in the corners.
No.
If you were to compare them to the EF variants, there's not a lot of difference. So sometimes it's arguable whether just to keep the EF glass rather than upgrade to an RF equivalent.
I think if you have a Red Ring L, like an L glass professional lens, EF, I don't think there's any point whatsoever to trade that in for an RF version.
So
look at that, he's alive.
We've got Marshall.
Hey, Marshall, good to see you.
Hello there. How are you?
How's it going?
Good. And of course, company knocked on the front door at exactly 10.
Of course they did. That's how it goes. That's how it goes.
Yeah. Marshall, we've just been briefly talking about the 24-105 2.8.
Nice.
I've noticed a theme in a lot of RF glass that while Canon has done improvements in the central part of the glass, I'm seeing a lot of softness in the corners. When you compare it to the EF, there's very little difference. There is obviously slightly better controlled chromatic aberration in the RF glass versus the EF glass. But I've been noticing that the tinge in the chromatic aberration is more green in the RF glass than it was in magenta in the actual EF glass. So there's a slight change there in terms of their optical formula. But sometimes it's arguable whether it's worth the upgrade to go from your EF to sell your EF to get an RF lens, because it's a massive investment, in some cases. And a good example of that is the 70-200 2.8. Like, you can get the older EF a lot cheaper. And, like Dan's just upgraded to the Mark III 70-200. And I suspect if you'd bought the R3, you would have contemplated getting the 70-200 RF glass. Is that something you might do yourself, Dan, or still stick?
If I get the R3 or R1 soon, I think I'm going to stick with my Mark III for quite a while, because just when you compare, watch online comparisons between the two, the difference is not remotely significant enough to even, I think, contemplate a switch there. If I had some Mark I, yeah, definitely. But with the Mark III, I don't think there's any point in upgrading to the RF version anytime soon, unless they come out with the Mark II and do some significant work on that.
Well, it's a smaller lens, right? Seems like it's the most compelling of the upgrades they have, right?
But Paul and I talked about that right before you came in. I luck around a Sigma 120-300 2.8 or a 60-600. The 70-200 really is, I consider it a small lens. And the 24-70 is like a microscopically small lens for me, for what I usually luck around.
Okay.
So Paul just said, yeah, what if you can only take one large, one small lens? I was like, well, that's great. Then I can take my 120-300 and my 70-200. One large, one small. And of course, many people wouldn't consider the 70-200 a small lens. But for what I usually have in my backpacks, the 70-200 is a small lens.
Yeah. Wow. Well, we talk about big lenses.
That's a big lens.
Yeah.
Was that with the hood?
Yeah, that's with the hood on. Take that off.
Yeah, so what is that? A 300-2.8 or?
Yeah, basically 300-2.8 with a 2x on the end. So I've got 600 at 5.6, or 420 with the 1.4. Or if you use an APS-C camera, that's 480 at 2.8. Or if you put the 1.4 on there with the like the R7, we're talking 670 millimeters at f4. So there's various options. You can go full frame or APS-C or extenders or a combination of both. And while this is not as heavy as a 500 f4, which is like my dream lens, it's like half the price of the Mark II EF.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago when I was on the trip of being like half a mouse click away from buying the 500 f4. And luckily, I could control myself and didn't do it. But it's still in the back of my mind.
Yeah, there's a popular YouTube I follow called was it Summit Hall? Can't remember his first name. Brent Hall, I think. It's Brent Hall. He had the 100 to 500 like I've got here. RF lens, very popular, obviously. He basically got rid of this and some other cameras and went for the 500 f4 because it is literally, it's not always about the sharpness. Don't get me wrong, that lens is going to be super sharp. It's probably, if it's not equal to the 300 2.8 in terms of sharpness, 500 f4 is amazingly sharp lens. But what you're paying for is not really the sharpness in the glass, although it's incredibly sharp. I'm not saying it in. It's the aperture you're paying for. It's always the aperture. 2.8 lets 4 times the amount of light in than say an f4 does. An f4 the same as 5.6. And then when you go down the line and we look at this lens, 800 millimeters, f11. F11 sucks. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, it does.
That's
a trend I noticed with RF lines these days. They have f values that we wouldn't look at in the EF series. Even 20 years ago, we would make fun of an f11 lens. And for some reason, RF seems to think that's an appropriate amount of light. Just because the camera sensor can do it, it feels a little bit like, let's push the lens out quick so we don't have to put too much development and research into. Yeah, it's an f11, but the sensor can handle it, so it's going to be good enough. That's what those feel like to me with the weird high apertures.
Yeah, I mean, I paid, I think $350 or $400 for the 600, right? It's ridiculously cheap. I don't use it very much at all, but it's so cheap.
I had that lens. I sold it.
Not a lens or something.
In fact, I found the Sigma Contemporary 150 to 600 actually sharper than the 600 RF. Not by much, don't get me wrong, but it was minor. But you have to expect that though, because I think it's an 82 millimeter filter thread on the 600 RF f11, where it's 95 millimeters on the Sigma Contemporary, 105 on the Sport. You see, the bigger your front element is, the more light you're
the more light are let in.
More quality, exactly. And that's where the differences are.
That's what some people don't get. Just because it says f2 on one lens and f2 on another, it doesn't mean that the same amount of light is actually used at the aperture. f2, let's say let's make it a percent just for fun. 2.8% of 100 is not a lot, but 2.8% out of 20 is a lot. So the bigger I have my aperture in the front, the more light I get in, the more light I have to work with at my actual aperture.
And this is where I'm very critical of Canon's continuing theme of small aperture lenses. So basically, they've brought out the 200 to 800 f9 lens. Now it's slightly better than f11, obviously, not hugely, but
it's still far out there.
Yeah, but the point being is, I think everyone's been killing and waiting for Canon to come out with something like the Sony have got. 200 to 600, 6.3. That's what we want, a 6.3 lens. Now that lens starts out at 6.3 at 200. Very, very quickly, it gets to f8 at 600 millimeters. And the transition is very quick to the higher aperture. I think it's just under 400 millimeters. It goes to 7.1, and then very soon after, I think 500 millimeters, it gets to f8. So at 600 millimeters, you're at f8, and then just after 600 millimeters, it jumps to f9. So between 600 and 800, you're at f9. And I think Canon is cheating a little bit here. They're saying our cameras can do really good at higher ISOs, so we'll use higher ISOs. But a higher ISO isn't an excuse to have a small aperture lens.
I agree.
That's what's Canon doing, is looking for cheapness rather than quality. I think a lot of people would have rather Canon come out with a 6.3, 200 to 600. That was something they put a patent in to come out in the EF lenses some years ago, but they never made it. They registered a patent in Japan to come out with an EF 200 to 600 lens. I even did a video on it, saying this is great, fantastic. We're going to finally have what Sony have got, and they never made it. And then they come out with these other weird lenses like, f11, 600, 800, 200 to 800.
They're also, they're doing that kind of thing with their low-end wide angles, right? They just assume, we'll use post-processing and take the chromatic aberration and all this distortion out, and we're going to sell you a really cheap 14 millimeter lens and call it a 16 millimeter because we have to cut out so much of that image to make it look decent, right? In post. And the raw versions of those are they're terribly barrel distorted and
really
acceptable, right? So
damn.
Yeah, the lens corrections that I'm seeing in the software side on the cameras, I like to take off lens correction because it gives you an idea what the lens actually does, not what the software is manipulating and showing you. And it can be quite, well, some people would argue a bit deceiving, really, because you think you're getting a great lens with the lens correction on, and then when you turn it off because you start doing some tests on test charts to find out, is this lens better than that other one? And you start realizing, hang on a minute, this software is doing a lot more than I thought it did.
Well, I think the truth is we're probably going to go much farther and farther in that direction where, like these problems with, softness and noise that are caused by using f11 lenses, they're just going to fix it with AI and say, oh, it's a tiger. We're just going to paint a picture of a tiger for you. Here you go. Look how sharp it is. And I don't know if people, I don't like that at all.
No.
I work with sometimes incredibly fast moving subjects, horses. So even at a 1000s or 1600s of a second, I might still have some kind of blur, especially if they're further away. And I broke down over Black Friday. It was a great deal. I bought the whole damn Topaz suit. All the programs I have, all four, for just $299. But okay, they're mine. I don't have to pay monthly subscriptions. Kind of nice. And it automatically creates a plugin into Lightroom Classic, which is kind of nice. And I'm actually blown away. There's images that I would literally have to throw out because I can't use them. And I put them in there, and it doesn't take the program 20 seconds. And it looks like a tech shop picture that I might have taken with a 500 f4 Mark III. And
well, that's what we're right.
It makes it even harder for professional photographers because now also, Heine living down the road uses his little iPhone and takes the same picture and runs it through Topaz AI, and it looks literally exactly as mine. Yeah,
well, this happens kind of cyclically in photography, right? We went, SLRs got easier, right? I mean, it used to be, the whole process of taking a photograph and developing it and coming up with this grainy black and white, like a real art form and a real, an apprentice, and then they developed the film for you, and things just kept notching up, and then
the EF lens came out.
Digital photography changed it once again, and then the phones changed it once again, and the AI has changed it again. So I think, if you want to be viable as a professional photographer, you have to figure out, okay, how am I going to use my skill and talent to notch above that, to produce something that's better than what people will make using their AI software, right? And either that or you go find another job.
Yeah, that's why I'm trying to branch out a little bit more to the fine art with the black background photo shoots that I have today. just to get a little bit more there, because AI can't fix that yet. I ran some of my black background pictures through Topaz, and they were horrendous when they came out, because it doesn't understand that I'm actually aiming for the black background and the soft move from light into dark. It doesn't understand that. It can't comprehend that yet. So it's trying to fix an issue that isn't there, and changes lighting. It's unbelievable. It's horrible.
Let's say you're a wedding photographer, right? If you get that 1 in a million shot of the bride and her mother, having, a tender emotional moment, right? AI cannot do that.
No.
Right. And I like to do concert photography, right? And it's about the moment.
Exactly.
Where, their hair's flying a certain way and the music is flowing through them and there's energy. AI doesn't do that. It'll just
not yet.
look really crisp and sharp. So, but I think, to be a professional who's good, you really, you have to, I think one thing is mastering lighting.
Yeah.
Right? And what I find today is, when I talk to people, especially on DP review, is you say, well, lighting's very important. They just don't get it.
No.
It's just, well, no, I'll just use a bigger sensor. It's really not.
It's not how this works.
Not going to fix it. Right. If you want to be next level, it's not about throwing another $6,000 at the glass necessarily. Right. I mean, you could say all these, it's backward there, the strobes. Right. But, knowing how to see light and how that light's going to impact the photograph and the result, it's, I don't know. It's so important.
Yeah. It's embarrassing as it is. I see it at horse shows where there is a horse show photographer that pays money to be the photographer for that horse show. There's nobody else allowed in to make business out of it. It's just that photographer. And they come in with their people, and you see them stand and shoot straight into the sun. 30 feet or 20 meters to the right, perfect spot, perfect lighting, great shadows where they need to be, great light where it needs to be. Nope. Straight in the sun so they don't have to move. They don't get it. And when my wife is riding on a horse show, of course I still show up with my gear and take pictures of her. I'm not selling them, so nobody can do anything about it. But I move around. Most of them stand in one spot, and every picture is the same. It's like it's mass production for many of them.
I think they just don't know. Right.
They don't know, and they go for mass production because they have to shoot 40 people's pictures for one to go buy 1 or 2 images. That's why I usually don't do the full horse show photographer. I shoot for individuals, and that's it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, because having the right lighting can make all the difference. Like a lot of people just sit in the rooms when they're doing like vlogs and stuff, and they don't think about lighting. It's always a good idea to get some light boxes, because that can make a difference, because you don't always need like a lens with a massive aperture. If you're using lights, you can compensate a little bit for having like a smaller aperture lens, like a 5.6 versus a 2.8, because it captures obviously less light. You're gonna have to use lights to artificially increase the light in your room. So lighting is very important, especially in wedding photography, because you need to lighten it up. 2.8, even 1.8 sometimes isn't enough in dark lighting situations. An example of that is if you go to cathedrals or churches, they're incredibly dark, and sometimes having a wide aperture lens just won't cut it, and you have to bring lights in to light it up. They do a lot of this in film production, where they want to light a scene, but it's too dark to use like the lowest aperture lens they've got. So they bring in lights to lighten the scene. And obviously that has the benefit of reducing your noise and your gain that you get in your videos. And you can always experiment yourself, get a light and a camera, set it up, and then put the light closer to the camera and you, for example, and see what happens in the noise away from you in the various sides of what you're filming. and you can notice a difference in that noise. It changes from really grainy to reasonably acceptable, just by changing the lights closer to you. And it's all about managing your lights.
I think there's a lot more to it than just throwing photons, right? I mean, there's, where's shadow falling? Where's highlight? Where's it too bright, too dark? What kind of mood? Like you throw a light up from underneath someone, they look like a ghoul, right? or if it's too much, it's too harsh on one side, it's no good. All those, like, I mean, the classic wedding photo that's, I think, like the huge challenge, right, is the bride outdoors in a white dress, right, and trying to get all the detail of that lace.
Oh yeah, easy blowout.
So hard, right?
Yeah.
And then especially if she has a dark complexion, right? It's extremely difficult, right? Because you have to have all that contrast, and you want tone, right? You don't like, here's the black, here's the white. I mean, you want tone, everything in between, and all those shades of white to come out, clearly and not, overexposed. I think it's a big challenge. I don't know, maybe AI will work on wedding dresses or something, but it's just something, I think, that's part of the art of photography, right? And like a step better photographer is really like, you look around and say, okay, where's my light? Where's light going? Where's the subject? How's that light impact the subject? And
how can I manipulate the light I have? How can I bring in more light? How can I take light away?
Yeah. Where can I stand to optimize? Where can I put the subject optimized? All those things, right? If you don't think like that, now, personally, it's my opinion, you're just not a good photographer, right?
I agree.
Right. And because it takes, I don't know, it took me forever, a long time to get there, because we new photographers tend to focus so much on the equipment and the gear, and they're not really thinking about the photograph, right? Not looking in the viewfinder thinking, what's this thing someone's going to hold in their hand and look at? What are they going to think when they look at it, and how's it going to appear? Because even with digital viewfinders, it's still, there's a difference between what I'm seeing on the little tiny viewfinder and like Aperture. And that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, no, I get it. And I remember when I bought my first speed light for my 7D. And it's like, well, this is going to be awesome. Now I got a super powerful flash, so light won't be a problem anymore. Turns the flash on, took a picture, and it was pretty much a white screen. And you're like,
Yeah, this guy.
That's odd.
Yeah. I was at an air show photographing aircraft such as the Eurofighter, and they were doing lots of maneuvers, but the sun was too high behind me, and it was like blowing out the aircraft. I couldn't get any decent images of it until it got to a certain angle. And you've seen some of those images I've uploaded on the Facebook group. But there were times when I thought, damn it, the sun, it's not capturing what I want. And it affected my tracking on my 100 to 500. I was losing tracking as well quite a bit, because obviously the contrast was off as well. And I kept getting frustrated because of the angle of the sun. And sometimes the time of day makes all the difference. So,
definitely.
Like if it was earlier and the sun was a bit over to the right, I wouldn't have had a problem. But when the sun started getting above here, it's shining all that light of the aircraft and making it really dark on my viewfinder.
That book, how is it there?
Got the same book. Got the same book.
Oh, good. And I went to a 2-day seminar that he taught. And
oh, really?
Man, yeah. It was, I don't know, 10 years ago. I don't know if he's still doing them, but wow. I mean, the guy really is just, he'll use 22 speed lights. Yeah. Right. You get them, right? He's so
mind-blowing.
Well, I mean, this is
those setups.
Smashing a pumpkin. I mean, look at, it's unbelievable, right? But he really, goes through like the, one key light and, a second, or a 3-light setup and the 4-light setup, and, how to, I don't know, like look for light. You know, like you're driving down the road and suddenly the sunlight looks awesome. Okay, honey, get out of the car and you get the thing.
Right now, we have 3 minutes before the light is gone.
Yeah.
I get it. And actually, today is my first time doing the black background with 2 speed lights set up, 2 LNBs. One is the main one, the 1600, and I'm going to set up a AB400 as a kicker on the floor just to get a little bit more of an outline done. So it's going to be a little bit of an experiment today, since I've never done that.
Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. I think I've done that with the multiple lights. It sounds easy, but
it's not. It's definitely not. But I think it's going to be a fun learning experience today. I have another photographer who does that shot with that setup for a living. And she's coming to kind of help me get the right setup and explain why and what. And that's going to be very helpful. It's going to be, I think, an amazing day today just having her explain that.
Buy her lunch for sure.
Oh, we do that a lot. She lives like 8 houses down.
Yeah. Because I think that's where we, if we want to take our art form, amateur or professional, farther in the age of AI, we have to master these more.
Oh, definitely. And she is actually the photographer who invented equine black background photography shots like 15, 20 years ago. She was the very first one to ever did those shots and sold them as a professional. Nowadays they are relatively common, but she is actually the initial one who did it. And I'm so lucky. She's a good friend of ours. We ride together. We do the hunt together. And she lives 8 farms down the road.
Wow.
So actually 2 years ago when we had a foal delivered and my wife was on her way to DC for work, in the evening I was alone and the foal was a little stuck. Well, she was the lady I called and showed up, helped me pull that foal out of the mare.
Oh, man.
So,
That's pretty close.
Yeah, she's a really cool person. Her name is Ali Conrad from Ali Conrad Photography. She's really good. She travels the nation, gets hired for photo shoots.
So you guys got any thoughts on the Canon R5 Mark II?
It's going to be pretty tempting.
Yeah, 62 megapixels stat sensor, 8K 60 frames per second raw, possible, well, the rumors are it's going to be 60 megapixels. But what's interesting is you have the ability to dumb that down to 31 or 15.
Yeah.
I don't think the 15 would be very practical, but if you want to keep your file sizes a bit smaller, 31 megapixels is very comparable to what the 5D Mark IV and 3s was, or the EOS R, for example. So if it does that, it sort of negates the need for them to bring a separate 30 megapixel camera out that some people do want to come out, like an EOS R Mark II. So we're looking at 2 Digit X2 processors, dual CF Express Type B card slots. I would have preferred them to keep one SD card because not everyone has, expensive CF Express cards,
Tell me about it.
Well, now, that's for sure. And the expensive reader that goes with them.
Yeah, because it can be quite pricey.
It's the same. We started with the CF Fast for the damn 1DX.
Yeah.
If I buy a 3 or a 1, can throw that card away because it doesn't work anymore.
Really?
I'll buy an even more expensive card.
Yeah.
But you know why they've done that, don't you?
Of course, where you can sell more cameras and more cards.
Yeah. Looks like we're going to have a new button layout and eye-controlled autofocus.
I'm intrigued by the eye-controlled focus or the eye tracking. That would be very helpful for me with the fast-moving subjects. Like the R3 has already as well.
Well, I owned the original 5D, in film, and that had, believe it or not, eye-controlled focus back in the day. Same as the, I think the 3D as well did, although it was no one was that interested in the 3D. It was always about the 5Ds, and it worked fine. And then Canon just went away with that. And then they've brought out this eye control tracking, thinking it's a new thing, new technology.
Yeah. No, it's like 20 years old.
Around for many years.
Yeah, it's decades old, but now it works. With the modern computers and algorithms, it actually works. It's reliable.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm not seeing anything in the new R5 that would make me buy it. But that's just me. I like my 5D Mark IV like a lot, and I still wonder if I made a mistake selling it, because the concert photography I do is all about low light, right? Even when there's good stage lighting, right? It's
still low light,
darkness, and the R5, because of the higher resolution, is not as good at low light. So I probably should have gotten the R6 Mark II.
Well, in that case, the R5 Mark II might be interesting for you, since you can dumb it down to half the resolution.
I don't know. We'll see, right? If it really makes,
could be interesting, could be disaster,
or if they're just taking, it depends what they do. I guess I don't know if it's just like a save as, right? Then they're downscaling. I don't know if that'll get any benefit.
There is going to be a benefit though for that coming out. The R5 is going to drop in price hugely, like my R6 did. It dropped £1,500 literally overnight when the R6 Mark II came out.
Yep.
So if you're on the fence for getting the R5 because it's too expensive at $4,000, right?
Wait a couple of weeks.
It will drop in February. That's when the announcement comes. People will be on eBay selling all their R5s to get the R5 Mark II.
It's the same. I'm considering when the R1 comes out. Should I spend that much and buy an R1, or do I wait for the massive price drop in the R3 and jump on that one for my first jump into mirrorless?
Well, even the R3s, I've seen them on eBay for about just short of $4,000. So they're coming down. They're coming down.
Yeah, I mean, I can buy under 10,000 clicks R3 on eBay for about $4,000.
Yeah, so maybe just wait for the R5 to come out, and then bang, all of these R3s have become available.
Yeah, that's what I might do. I will keep my 1DX Mark II anyway. I'm not going to sell that. Even so, still, thank you, Canon customer service, best service ever. They just sent me pretty much a brand new one. And I'm not going to get rid of that.
Tell us about the story of that.
Well, I'm a Canon CPS Gold member, and I figured, you know what, the Mark II is getting old, and my shutter is up in the 500,000s. I was like, you know what, I'm going to send it in and get the shutter replaced just before they stop servicing that model. And my main dial was defective. Sometimes it reacted, sometimes it reacted backwards, sometimes it didn't react at all, which was great, makes you miss many shots. So I sent it in, and they guarantee you a 3-day turnaround as a CPS Gold member. Well, after 3 days, I get my shipping notification that my camera is coming back to me and all good, and FedEx shows up the next morning, and I open the package, and I'm a little confused because, my camera has been used a lot, and that's what it looks like. And the camera I unpacked doesn't have a single nick, ding, or scratch on it. I was like, man, their cleaning service is next level. They literally cleaned 6 years off my camera. And I check and give them a call, like, hey guys, what's up? They're like, the top dial was on back order. We didn't have it in. And in the fine print, it says we do reserve the right to replace with equal or better equipment if we deem it necessary. We deemed it necessary, so we send you a refurbished Mark II. Cool. So 0 shutter count, not a mark on it. The worst part was all my settings were gone too, of course. That took a while. There's so many little settings in that 1DX series that you forgot you changed 2 years ago. And now you're like, why doesn't this thing light up? Or where's that? Why? It took me quite a while to figure that out. But totally worth getting pretty much brand new 1DX Mark II for free. Just because it didn't have a $20 dial on hand.
It's a shame they didn't have something in the fine print saying, oh, we'll have to send a Mark III.
Yep. That would have been nice.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have complained about that one bit either. I would have loved having the Wi-Fi transmitter built in. That's one thing I miss on my Mark II. And I'm not spending $500 on an external attachment for Wi-Fi. I'm not doing it. It's going to be in the way. It's going to get broken off in the first 2 weeks of me doing stuff outside. So that would have been nice in a Mark III.
Yeah. Going back to the R5, looks like they've improved the battery more so than what they have done already, but still retaining the LPE6 form factor, which is interesting. We'll wait to see what that actually looks like. 4K at 120 frames per second, which means you got slow-mo, which is pretty good. That's basically it really for the R5. Obviously, this is all coming from Canon rumors, so we have to take that with a pinch of salt because it can be wrong. You know, a lot of people do rely on Canon rumors too much and think it's fact what they're giving out. It's not always true what they're going to give out. Such as the Ordinary Filmmaker did a video about the 200 to 800 lens, claimed it had diffractive optics on multiple videos. Turns out they're UD elements, not diffractive optics. Proper glass in effect, not. You see, I don't know if many of you guys realize, but diffractive optic is basically an optics that's sliced in half and grated with a laser, different angles, and they can make it smaller, make a lens a lot smaller. However, you're still doing something with glass, so there's always a possibility of something coming through that laser that you're doing with that glass that might be not so great, rather than using a solid piece of glass. I prefer a solid piece of glass rather than diffractive optics.
Definitely. I agree. The DOs are a nice attempt at saving some money at bigger lenses, but I don't think they can quite keep up, as evidenced by their rare appearance in new glass.
Scotty B wants to know whether you'd recommend RF 200 to 800 for shooting aviation. Right now he's at 55 to 250 EFS, so I guess he's shooting.
Scotty. The 200 to 800 for shooting aviation. Good question. That is. It depends how much light there is and what shutter speed you can get. You're going to need a shutter speed of around 2,000th of a second at least. And it all depends on, if it's a bright sunny day, you probably can achieve that shutter speed. However, it depends. You know, overcast day, forget about it. You're going to need something like an f4 lens. You know, is using a 55 to 250 EFS presently. That'll be a 5.6 lens as memory. You know, as I remember, because I used to own that. It's a pretty good lens. You're also considering the RF 100 to 400. That's a good lens, but unfortunately at 400 is at f8. On a bright sunny day, you'll achieve 2,000 of a second with a reasonable ISO, no problems. However, it's when you've got heavy overcast days that's the problem. I noticed that when I went to the Royal Armouries in the UK. It's like a jousting event where they're on horses. Obviously, you might appreciate that, Dan. And the jousting, obviously, with these fake lances, and they're trying to knock each other off the horse. And I was using the 100 to 400 5.6 lens. It was really dark, really overcast. It was almost like a dawn or sunset, and it was very dark. And the shutter speeds I was getting were nowhere near what I needed. So in the end, I had to take that lens off. I was using the 1.4 extender on there as well at 560 millimeters at f8, and it just wasn't good enough. I took it off. 5.6 at 100 to 400, it still wasn't good enough. I had to bring out my 70 to 200 2.8 lens, and I just wasn't getting the focal length, obviously, because it's quite short from where I was. The light was the 2.8 aperture was just enough to get around, I think it was 1,000th of a second in shutter speed. But there are occasions when you need those big apertures. You know, if you go into a forest, it is very dark. An f11 lens will not cut it for anything moving at all. Even 5.6 is a stretch, and you're going to have to obviously expand your ISO really high. As we've talked before about these f11, f9 lenses, that this is why there's so much disappointment about the 200 to 800 lens, because of that f9 aperture. I think people would have far more preferred a 200 to 600 6.3 lens at the far end, you know, comparable to what we've got Sigma. And it's very possible if Canon relents with the Sigma band that they've done, you know, or any sort of third-party manufacturer getting into this in regards to making autofocus lenses. I don't know if any of you guys have actually seen a recent review that I've done of the Ariston TT lens 500 f6.3 manual focus lens. Not an easy thing to do with a manual focus lens, focus on anything. I tested it, don't get me wrong, it is a good lens. It gives good sharpness. In fact, in some instances, it was better than the RF 100 to 500 because the corners were better. And this goes back to what I was saying regarding RF glass from Canon isn't that sharp in the corners. And I noticed that when I did a test chart and I compared some of the text in the far corners was actually sharper on the Ariston lens than it was on my 100 to 500 RF lens. So it's a mixed bag, really. Don't get me wrong, the RF 200 to 800 lens, and I have put up a new video. I know Dan's may have seen that, where I compared the RF 200 to 800 versus the 100 to 500 with a 1.4. I've not actually tested the lens myself, going off what other people have sort of discovered themselves. It would appear to me, though, that the image quality you're getting from the 200 to 800 versus the 100 to 500 with a 1.4 extender at 700 millimeters is equal in image quality.
Impressive.
You know, what makes an L lens? People will be asking, what makes an L lens? It's the coatings on the lens. Like on the 100 to 500, you've got many different types of spherical coatings on the lens to reduce flare, make it sharper, stop ghosting, all these various things. And that's what's absent from the RF 200 to 800. You do not have those coatings. So what that means in certain circumstances, and I think Jan Wagner, a YouTuber, has done some tests on this, and he noticed that when you've got blown out branches that are white, for example, the RF 200 to 800 has a tendency to not expose it properly, while the 100 to 500 does because it's got those extra coatings on them. So in regards to Paul's question, sorry, Scotty B's question, it's really up to you, really. There's no do-it-all lens out there. You know, each one has its pluses and negatives. The 200 to 800 lens is going to be good in good light. It's just when it's dark, you know, like I've got this lens, as I've shown it earlier on. This is a 300 2.8 lens with a 2x extender at 5.6. I can take this off 300 millimeters at 2.8. Now, you might think that's quite short, and it is quite short for a lot of things. However, you stick an R7 on this, you've got 480 millimeters. Now, I have a 1.4 extender that I can put on this and then use the R7, and you're at 670 millimeters at f4. And I don't find focus that effective, even with the 2x, because it's already at 2.8. Focus is pretty good. You might, if you were to do a similar sort of thing with the 100 to 400, you know, EF Mark II lens with a 2x, yes, it is very slow with that, but that's starting out at 5.6. So obviously you're at, what was it, F10, F13 or something like that. You know,
sport, it's a great lens. Like, I know you've never heard of this thing we have here called baseball, but for baseball,
yeah, we have. I've seen Jared Pollan do a lot of tests. He did
build a board or something, but that's the same thing, right? Pretty much, right? For that kind of a field sport, not for what you would call football, but for baseball or cricket, 300 2.8 is fantastic. It's a great ones, and it softens up the background, so the two people eating popcorn and drinking Coke, they don't show up. They're just this cool little blurry thing, and the players pops right out. It's a great lens.
So then is your argument then, obviously, is then you could get the 600 f4, which obviously gives you more magnification, and does a similar job. Now, I have tested the differences between 2.8 and f4, and when you look at the background blur, it's not that different. The only difference really, obviously, there's a slight bit more of separation blur that you're getting with 2.8 versus f4, but it's only slight. And but then again, the 2.8 or the f4 lets in more light, 4 times more light, so you can still get a better shutter speed in dark lit situations. You know, I'm not saying that a 2.8 lens isn't what we all want, because yeah, who wouldn't want a lens that lets 4 times the amount of light in? You know, and especially overcast situation, like I mentioned in that jousting event, a 2.8 f4 was actually a necessity. Or if you go into a forest, you know, many wildlife photographers, you know, take these f4 lenses into forests because they can't achieve what they want from an f11, f10, f9 lens. It's not fast enough. But then again, they haven't. A lot of people haven't got 13 grand to throw at a f4 600 lens.
Yeah,
That's why they go for the Sigma 150s to 600s of these cheaper Canon ones that are coming out, because they can't fork out 13 grand for an f4 600 lens. But obviously, that's the lens that all professionals aspire to purchase.
Yeah.
But they can justify it a lot of the time because it's in their workflow, and they can obviously say that's an asset. They can even write off some of the money for tax, you know, and say it's part of the business.
Yeah, so it's a challenge for a lot of people to buy a lens like that. But that's the sad, unfortunate truth, right? Is these super fancy lenses are the best ones for sure.
Yeah,
there's no doubt about it.
But expensive, you know. It took me 2 years of paying for this. I got it really cheap off eBay for £3,000, and that's quite cheap. To buy it new, I think it was 6,700 quid, something like that. And obviously, they've just brought out the RF 100 to 300 lens, which was retailing for 11,000, which is a massive, massive price difference.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think I think it's well overpriced for what it is. You know, I know B&H did a review of that lens, but they reviewed it in a bright blue day. I thought, you can't test a lens out when you've got a ton of light and you want to use that 2.8 aperture. How are you going to use it when it's a bright sunny day with blue skies? You know, you need to go and wait. Well, either wait for it to be heavily overcast or go into a forest where it's very, very dark. Then you can test that lens to its extremes and realize, is it quick? How quick is it? Can it give me great image quality and high shutter speeds? Or what shutter speed can I achieve? And how far do I have to push that ISO? You know, and that's why people want the 2.8 aperture lenses. So sometimes when I see someone testing a lens out on YouTube and their tests are in a bright day, it's like, well, why bother? You know.
I got it.
So I was lucky enough to get this SanDisk thing on. This was my Black Friday purchase this year.
Yeah.
So this thing is 4 terabytes and it's Thunderbolt 3. And the reason I bought it is if you're a Mac user, right? Apple charges like horrendous amounts of money for more storage, right? To go for like 256 gigs to 512, and you kind of need 512 if you do any kind of editing, right? It's like $200, and if you want like a terabyte or 2 terabytes, it's like another $1,000. Right? Wow. It gets very expensive. So this drive, I think my sale price is like $320, and this thing is very fast. It's like several gigs a second. So it's almost as fast as the internal drive. So I can move, you know, like 128 gigs of files from the internal to this in like, you know, under a minute, like really, really fast. You can now finally do editing from external storage, which never could before. Before, if you have like, I don't know, if you go and you shoot 1,000 images and you want to pull them up in your raw editor and cull through and look at them, any other drive was too slow. So I'd have to copy it all internal, wait, and then start working. And now if I want to go through my archive to try to find something I shot, a year or two ago, it's terrible. Especially now that I moved to network attached storage, which is behind me. So the NAS is like only a gigabyte a second or gigabit a second, right? Gigabit Ethernet. So it's terribly, terribly slow. It's really reliable and there's great things about it, but you can't edit from your NAS drive at all. So
that makes sense.
This was, and it's, I don't know if you can see how tiny it's really small.
It is tiny.
Have you seen the video that Jared Pollan put out about storage regarding standard storage units like you've got in your hand? And apparently there was some negative feedback about them on Amazon reviews. I don't know if you've seen anything like that.
No, but that man is a terribly annoying person. Maybe he found something I didn't know. What was the problem?
Apparently just unreliable, and some people were going to the Samsung Extreme ones.
Yeah. Okay.
Have you experienced any problems with that yourself?
No, I just got it. But this is not, you don't use this as your backup drive, right? You're making a mistake, right? Because the backup drive is like a redundant RAID, and you back up the RAID. So I don't know. Can you see it? Let's make it like over there. So I have a RAID, and on top of it is a hard drive that backs up to it, right? Right there. Well, you can see it. So there's 4 drives in there, and if one drive fails, it keeps working fine. And if the whole thing's broken for some reason, like the controller card blows up or something, I have a backup drive on top of it. And then the next thing I'll do is I'll have that's going to back up over the internet, encrypted to another set of drives, out of state, like if my house burns down or something.
That's a great idea, because that's always a concern for many people, that if for whatever reason your house did burn down, you would lose everything, Well,
or if someone comes to steal your computer, they're going to steal your backup drive, unfortunately, because they're thieves.
Right.
I mean, you could maybe, bolt it to something in a closet where you can't see it, but they're just going to steal you. It's the most valuable looking thing. So they're going to steal all that stuff. And, when that's your livelihood, it's not acceptable. Right.
My backup drive is actually in my gun safe. Wired. It's running inside the safe. And the safe is rated for a 95-minute house fire. So it's about as safe as I can have it at home.
Yeah. But the ultimate, they called 3-2-1 backup, right? The ultimate is you have something off-site somewhere, right? And then, and also that's my next step, because we don't buy this equipment all in one day.
No. Wouldn't it be nice? We need to win the lottery first to make it a one-day thing.
But at first I used to use this Drobo enclosure, but it started to get unreliable. So then I went with Synology, and it took a while for me to finally decide I'd try it and everything. So but it works, and I use like the Apple Time Machine backup, so it backs up my Macintosh, but the photo storage is separate because the Mac only has, I think, 512 gigs, so that's not any good for my photo archive, which is many terabytes now.
Right. Yeah. Well, storage can be quite important. Even if it's a matter of having like because not everyone that watches the stream will be probably a professional, but even if you're like an amateur, it's a good idea to store it on a backup, and maybe keep it at your parents' house. Maybe not at your house, just in case.
Well,
it's a good idea.
Right, whatever your tax records, your whatever business records, anything. But that kind of data is small. It's really easy to, put that on a, SD card for that matter, and put it in somebody else's house.
Yeah.
But photos I found it's very challenging because you go out and do one shoot and you can come back easily come back with 50 gigabytes if you've got this 45 megapixel camera, and if you get now this new R5 II, right? Even more storage. So even a 128 gigabyte card might not be enough.
Yeah.
Right? And if you're shooting, I mean, the dual cards concept is really for redundancy, right? So you're shooting both at once. So if one fails, the other still works. That's pretty much
exactly
that. But if you don't need that, now you maybe are looking at a 256 gigabyte card for that camera. And if you're using two of them, I mean, that's
$500 per card right there.
Yeah, it's quite expensive.
Yeah.
Actually,
I mean, even I usually still on my Mark II 1DX, I still work with just 64 gigabyte cards. And that even adds up.
Yeah.
Oh, don't make me laugh. They're small.
Yeah.
Now,
they are.
And I don't think people consider that when they're looking at this new camera. But then when you get it home, right? It 60 megabyte files or megapixel files. It means it's going to take longer to copy. If you went from a 24 megapixel camera to a 60 megapixel camera, you're in for a surprise when you start editing them. If you shoot a lot, like I do, right?
Yep.
If you're back with 1,000 photos, like offloading, it's going to take you forever, and then you try to bring it up in a photo browser.
Oh yeah.
Oh, my camera doesn't have enough memory anymore, and I need some new processor to pull it up, and takes forever to scroll. It's really kind of a.
Which brings us back to the AI. It needs so much RAM to be able to do its job that very soon computers we all need to upgrade again massively to have the hardware to even process those files properly.
Yeah. Well, luckily I don't need AI.
Yet.
Really. I tried it in that Photoshop. They said, here, try the new AI. It'll remove some background. It didn't work at all.
You should. Topaz has a 30-day trial as well. I would say give it a shot for shits and giggles and look at pictures in RAW that you think, I can't really save this one. And let Topaz AI give it a crack. You might be surprised.
Yeah, I bought into, what was I have the other one, DxO. I bought Topaz, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. It was like, okay. And then I got the Photolab Pure, whatever it is. Photolab, yeah, DxO Photolab, which has pure RAW. And that does a kind of a nice job with dark backgrounds and all of that. So
have you tried Photoshop beta? Because apparently that's been included in one of the new updates for denoising your images.
I don't know which Photoshop I have.
The new denoising software or AI they have in Lightroom is already mind-blowing.
Oh God, no. I don't. I gave up on Lightroom a long time ago. So Photolab does all. So my process is I do all my raw editing with Photolab, with DxO Photolab, and then save it out as a high-res JPEG and finish it up in Photoshop if I need to do like spot editing. And I usually crop it down, add my watermark and stuff like that. So I mean, I guess there's like a million ways to do it, and I'm not the best photo editor by a long shot.
No, me neither. I just do it as I need to and learn while I do. At some point, I really need to invest and take an actual course in Photoshop, I think.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, if you watch these YouTubers, they're always trying to push their presets. The thing is, you don't need the presets. Just do it yourself,
Yeah. Now and then, a preset is a great start to get your picture in the right direction, but I've never had a preset that I applied and said, oh, perfect. Don't have to do squat to my picture now. No, it gets you in the right direction, just like clicking on auto in Lightroom. Gets you in the right direction, but you still have to tweak every little slider yourself.
So so again, you look at an example like this guy, right? So 2 seconds later, the lighting is different. So what preset do you use to set white balance? You don't, right? You look at the keyboard.
Wait, there isn't keyboard player with purple background preset?
No. Well, basically, you have to set the white balance first, right? And so I try to find some white, and I think in this one it would have been the hat band, because that's the closest to the face.
Head and nose,
on keyboards, but the lighting hitting down there is different than what's hitting the face.
Yeah.
Right. And so no, there is no preset in the world that will say, "Oh, I'll make the face look correct." Maybe AI. I don't know.
Yeah, they work great for studio settings and stuff because there you can control it and pretty much mimic exactly what that preset needs.
Mhm.
But out in a dynamic shoot, they just don't work.
No, not like that's what I like. I like to photograph.
Give me a second. I think my dog is tearing something apart he shouldn't. Stay on. I'll be right back.
It's delicious, whatever it is. Probably.
Mm-hmm.
So Phil Roger, I think I've seen that name before. I have the good old Sigma 150 to 600 contemporary. I had it for 5 years, but I'm very interested in this new 200 to 800 lens. It's pretty much comparable if you compare apertures, apart from the fact at 600 your contemporary is 6.3, and your 200 to 800 at 600 will be at f8. So the choice is yours. But in terms of image quality, I suspect they do a very similar quality in terms of images. But the 150 to 600 lens is a fantastic lens. You know, the only thing that is problematic with the EF adapter on the Sigma 150 to 600s, whether it be the 60 to 600s, is a lot of people have been reporting basically a lot of images that come back soft in between focus.
That actually appears to be a 150 to 600 unique issue. The 60 to 600 seems to not have that problem.
I'm not sure because there's someone I follow that says that he's experienced the same sort of problems on the 150 to 600s that he did on the 60 to 600s. I suspect this problem would go away if Canon allowed Sigma to come out with RF 150 to 600, 60 to 600s, whatever it is, because then we won't have an issue regarding compatibility. And I think that's where it is. That's why I got rid of my 150 to 600 contemporary, because I thought I don't really want to deal with the issue of possibly having a few sharp images and a few soft images and then trying to sort which ones are sharp and which ones are not. You don't have that problem with the Canon lenses. So if that's an issue you don't want to deal with, obviously the 208 to 800 makes sense, unless Canon relent. And there's rumors going around that they are relenting, but we just don't know because there's no news really to come out. It's just rumors at the moment. You know, apparently Sigma are bringing out 2 prime lenses that are quite wide. You know, not telephoto, but I've not heard anything from Sigma for a long time. You know, you can't always believe what people put out on YouTube.
No, definitely not.
Because they're getting their information off Canon rumors. Canon rumors do not have a direct contact with Canon saying, yeah, we know everything's going off and we're going to tell you what's happening. It don't work like that. Canon are very tight-nosed when it comes to information. They're so tight-nosed, right, that when a YouTuber does a review on a lens that Canon's given to them to review, Canon will tell them when you can release that video. You cannot release that video until we say you can. That's basically how it works.
Yeah, or you'll never get another review again.
Exactly. So why do you think all these reviews that people are doing that are very positive, none of them are that negative about lenses, or because they don't want to upset their partner, which is Canon?
Yep.
You know, which doesn't always lend to the assumption that it's an unbiased review quite often. Because have you ever seen a review where they've completely slated a lens?
Not their own, no.
I haven't.
I don't know. It sounds like your 200 to 800 review is not stunning. It sounds like you're not that big a fan of that lens.
Well, I don't
review the lens. It's okay. There you go.
Yeah, I can't speak of anything personal with RF lenses yet because I have not used an RF lens or RF camera myself yet. So I have to kind of go by what I see online and it's verified by multiple sources. But otherwise, I have to, wait.
My general is that, I have a very positive. I love the way the customizability of the R5. It really works well for me. The autofocus system has been very difficult in the sense that if you want eye detection autofocus, that's one mode. And if you want something else, that's a different mode.
Yeah.
And that's a long time to figure out, right? Like if there's no eyes, it's just jumping all over the place, right?
Yeah.
And so finally I programmed 2 different back buttons. So one is for focusing on eyes and the other is for focusing on an object where you push it and then you can use the joystick to set the focus. You can focus again, and that's how you do that, right? But and I think maybe like the R6 II and some newer ones are better at automatic. I guess if there's no eyes, they switch to the other mode, which makes sense instead of guessing what object you want. Which, like, why would you guess at what object I want? I have a joystick for a reason.
Well, it does get confused when there's multiple birds in screen. So
yeah, that's another problem, right?
20 birds, it doesn't know which one to go on, so that's why single point can be quite useful, where you can override what Canon's trying to do and then you do it yourself. But sometimes that's not perfect, and sometimes you have to rack the manual focus ring a little bit just to get it to get onto it, because sometimes it can stick on the background. And this is what other YouTubers were mentioning regarding the Sigma Contemporary, where it sometimes was missing focus and getting soft images, not all the time, and it seemed to be quite irregular, but that's down to the algorithm that they've using in conjunction with the adapter. So it's not completely seamlessly communicating with the camera because it's adapted, and obviously Sigma are going off the adaptation that's been used. But hopefully when they come out with an RF lens, the communication will be a lot better and a lot faster, and we won't have that possibility of the focus. It does seem to me that sort of what I call pulsing going off happens at shorter distances rather than longer distances. So like if you're trying to photograph a bird in some reeds of grass, it can be quite challenging, where it's getting the focus and missing it and then hitting the grass and then coming back, and that's what it's sort of doing. But at longer distances, where you're shooting through the grass, you're not getting that sort of
I don't care about that. I mean, I kind of get, like, some YouTubers always going to say, oh, look at this corner case I found. I mean, like, wow, you figured out how to break something. It's not hard to do, right? It's not, right?
Yep.
But what is interesting to me, like what would be compelling to me, like in a new R5, is that in your 1DX, right, that camera has cross point autofocus points, right? So some autofocus points are only on the vertical, and some are only horizontal, and some are like diagonal and everything. And the mirrorless cameras of Canon, I think they only will focus. It's either on this kind or this kind. It's only that DPAF is only on, I think, only on horizontals and not verticals, or the other way around. So apparently they're working on a cross point solution so that the sensor can detect like horizontal and vertical contrast both, right? So that is better autofocus, right? 61 megapixels doesn't, it less than interests me, but
the better autofocus.
That could be like a game changer that's worth upgrading for. The other thing that I would really like to see is exposure preview, like highlight review or zebra stripes, right? So the camera, the R5 has zebra stripes if you're shooting video, but not if you're shooting stills. And when you're working in difficult lighting, it's really, you have to take a shot and then let it review and look to see if anything's flashing, and then adjust your exposure compensation. And in fast moving light, that's really a pain in the
nearly impossible.
It's possible. It's hard, right? It's hard. Yeah. So it's just not ideal. And to me, that's baffling, right? So I've called Canon support a million times saying, you have zebra stripes in video mode and not in stills. Add it. Like, give us that firmware. And what firmware do we get? We get some completely useless 400 megapixel feature that lets their marketing people brag that they can a 400 megapixel.
I remember that.
Only JPEG. Like, why do I even want that? Why does anybody want a 400 megapixel JPEG, right?
Just sounds impressive, and that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's stupid, and I don't. I'm sure that they only did it so they could say, oh, the world's highest resolution camera, and but it's useless. So I think they should fire their whole marketing department and bring in people who talk to photographers.
Actually,
care about photography, right? Because that's
what should be people who are photographers.
Yeah, people have that passion, and I just feel like they've kind of lost some of that, and I also feel like their menu system is horrible now, right? It used to be Canon's ergonomics were like the best by far, and they just every time they add something, they want to keep the old, right? Like it works the way, like I had a 7D, a 7D Mark II, a 5D Mark IV. All those menus worked exactly the same, and they added to them. But at some point, you're breaking that, right?
Yeah,
so they have to figure that out. It's
scrolling through my 1DX menu is I need to make a coffee. To make it from one end of the menu to the other end, I can make coffee and drink my coffee until I make it there.
But like things like telling it, I want to use 2 cards and I want to put JPEG on this one and RAW on this one, or I want you to put RAW on both. Like those menus are like really far apart. Like there's like screen 1 and screen like 12, and they both have to be configured right. And it's not well written. Like clearly, like they wrote that in Japan. And they didn't say to the American team, "Could you take a look at this? And does our description
does this work?"
Well, is it like you can push? It's not horrible. Like there's an info button, and they try to explain it, but they don't always explain these things well at all. And that's it's kind of critical if you want to be writing certain formats to certain cards. Very important, right? And you want that to be right, and they make it kind of difficult to understand. And like when they went, I think with the 62, and then with the R6 II has this power button that can be video mode or stills mode, right? That was really genius, because now, at least when I'm setting up for stills, I don't have to look at any video related settings. And if I'm shooting video and I set it up for video, I don't worry like, okay, what did I change in my still setup?
That's nice.
It's like 150 settings, right? How can you do that? But I think they have to have some people that finally say, look, we need to make a better, more ergonomic solution with now that we have 250 settings or whatever, because the old
needs
model,
to be easier.
Yeah, the old model's not working, and we need some native English speakers to review what we call these settings so that
and
we know people understand them.
One idea for that is like I do videos and stuff doing writing with my GoPros, and GoPro actually managed that menu and settings issue very well. There's 2 settings, standard and pro.
Well, sure. There's a lot more. I mean, I want the settings. Don't get me wrong. Like, I want to have all this button customizability.
But under the same umbrella, you could easily do something like that. Like you said, for the R6 Mark IIs, I did video or still. With a simple setting like that, it should be easy to do with most cameras to get you in what you want to do.
Yeah,
I think.
I just feel like that's a big step they seem afraid to take, because it's like I think they want, I mean, like when I bought a 5D Mark IV, I just had a 7D Mark II. Like I knew how to use it. I mean, I knew how to use it. Like I could just take it and start shooting. And I knew how to do everything and where my hands were and everything. And I think in mirrorless, that analogy starts to break. Right.
Got it.
There's so many different ways that you can use it. That's all. And
I mean, it was pretty much the same when I stepped from my 7D Mark II up to the 1DX Mark II. You start over. Like the first 2 screens are pretty much the same and they are easy, and then you get into the settings and then you need to start studying. Yeah,
the model changes, unfortunate.
Yeah.
The 7, not the 7, the R7's a bit like that, because you got that new wheel a bit above, so it makes it a bit of a learning curve a little bit, but it's not dramatic. It's not like having a Sony and being completely what the hell do I do now? But that's the joy of Canon, isn't it, where the menus are very, very similar, might be in a slightly different order, and you have to figure out where it is, but in essence it's not learning like a completely new system, is it?
Yeah, that's true. I don't think switching to Sony or Nikon is the answer for ergonomic heaven. That's for sure, right? And when you're using the camera, it works really well. Like my hands know what to do, but and it's a lot harder because like there's a control for everything with that camera in your eye, right? I mean, there's a lot, but the setup has some significant flaws, I think, right? I think, especially on the R5, because the video and audio, I'm sorry, video and still modes are combined, and they have things in like menu 1 and menu 8, or like if you want to use the joystick, you have to use like 3 or 4 different menu settings to configure it, not one. Like if you pick enable joystick, it's still not enabled, right? And then the things like that, right? It's not so easy to make it work, and it's because they didn't want to break the old menu structure when they should have realized they had to. I think.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Have you noticed any issue, Marshall, regarding the sensor on the back of your camera? When you put your eye to it and it turns the screen on the back off.
Yeah.
I had an issue when I put a high vis jacket on, and every time I went close to it, the LCD screen would go black, as if I put my eye up to the viewfinder. I thought, what's going on wrong? I think have I broken my camera? And this was on the EOS R. And then for some reason, someone said, well, why don't you take your jacket off? So I did, and it worked fine. I thought,
yeah,
my high-vis jacket can do that.
I remember the post you made about that, and somebody told you take the jacket off.
There's a setting you can use to keep both screens active at once, right? If that's what you want. And but like when you're setting up the menu, it happens a lot because like you reach over to push the menu button and the screen goes away.
Yeah.
And you go, oh yeah, that's right. And you move your hand.
You expect that, don't you?
I don't expect it, but it happens, right? Like
when your jacket's like, I don't know, half a meter away, it's like, well, what's turning it off? Now you can go into the settings and manually turn that off and have it on LCD or OLED screen, manually. But that sort of defeats the point of it being like an automatic thing, where you can just, be quite quick and easy. You don't want to be going into settings, turning that off, and then using that, and then turn it back on because you want to use the LCD screen because maybe you do, some vlogging or something.
But I wouldn't say it's like, oh man, I don't want this camera anymore.
Well, I thought I brought the EOS R, and I put it for sale, thinking I'd something was wrong with it.
No, I get it. I can see how that easily happens. I mean, I would most likely be very confused and frustrated with that issue myself as well. If I wouldn't think that, oh my God, it's my damn vest or jacket that turns that stupid screen off all the time.
Well, I don't.
No, I get it.
Tiny clothes like Paul. I'm more restrained in my wardrobe.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure I would be beaten to death at a horse show if I show up in a high-vis jacket or vest. But
well, you can actually buy these jackets as a photographer on the back, so no one's going to challenge you or something.
But I have polo shirts and a jacket that are embroidered and M3 reflective screenshot in the back that's my photography name on it. But they don't scream at anything in the area. They are blue and black and have the silver embroidery on it, and that's it. It doesn't scare the horses.
It doesn't scare the horses, yeah.
Well, a lime green jacket, high vis, there's a good chance you might cause some serious accidents at a horse show.
Yeah, well, when you shoot when you shoot at a concert, you usually wear black. So mostly black. So but it is like when you're setting up when I set up the camera, if you're using your hands, and looking at it, it happens all the time that the screen goes away. And
what about the R1? We're looking at 85 megapixels potentially, or they may dumb it down to 45. I don't know. But
I somehow don't see them put in 85 in an R1. It's kind of counterintuitive to the R line, the one line before.
Yeah. But what's really interesting, I found something out today that I've not seen before. It's a rumor. Keep it as it is. But what do you think about 24 frames per second mechanical raw burst.
Sounds good to me.
That's amazing if it can, because I know they were limited to 14.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, I had 14 and 16 in live view.
Yeah. Obviously, you can do a lot more than that on electronic, but that's electronic, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather get like a slightly lower res camera. Like I thought the 32, 33 megapixels of the 5D Mark IV was like perfect, right? It was perfect. I just it kind of went worse when it went higher resolution for me. So this whole thing chasing higher resolution is no interest to me
I
personally.
wish my 1DX had 10, 12 megapixel more, just for the crop factor that I have to do sometimes. You know, cropping into significantly to get the framing I want, just because I couldn't zoom anymore. For that, a couple more megapixel to do a larger print would be nice.
Well, so what I'm getting at is I'd rather have like lower resolution and better low light sensitivity in a global shot, right? And but you're asking for different things from the camera, and you can't get them all, right? You're not going to get 100 megapixels with global shutter and the ultra highest frame rate, right? So some number has to be the highest.
It's either or.
Yeah. So like so when you talk about really high frame rates, well, yeah, give me global shutter, man, or something very close to it, so I don't have that. What's it called? That motion
rolling shutter.
Yeah, that rolling shutter, right? And that takes a lower resolution to do. So yeah, I think more people would be more interested. You know, if you're shooting like sports or animals, like I don't need a 100 megapixel owl.
No,
you know, some
that's
people
really
do.
more for product photography and stuff, or where you need to make a giant billboard.
Yeah, if you're like
let's talk.
Nature, like a landscape photographer, and you're going out with a tripod, and you know,
astrophotography, I can see that being amazing for them.
Yeah, but and they're looking at frames per minute if they're lucky.
Yeah, yeah, that's more like per hour,
like 30-second exposure. So all that other stuff, like this shot over, can I see that right? If you want that kind of a shot, you know, that's a 30-second exposure. You can get 4 before the sun's light's all bad, right? So all those other things, you know, like don't global shutter, like what do I need that for? Right? I just, you know, different camera.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Going back to the R1 though, is that something that would interest you, or is it something? Because from what I'm gathering, they're not going to put a global shutter in that. It's probably too late in the day for them to do it. Obviously, they've seen what Sony's brought out, which is a global shutter, and people are going to be comparing Canon to Sony now, saying, "Well, are you going to bring us a global shutter out or not?"
It's going to hurt Canon if they don't, and I could see them delaying the release of the R1 to get a global shutter in it.
I doubt it. I doubt that.
It's already been a long time, hasn't it?
It's unless they buy that sensor from Sony, which they don't like doing.
No,
but it probably takes 18 months to 2 years to make a new sensor.
But don't forget, they might already have been working on one for 12.
Yeah, maybe, right. But
I mean, they pay attention to the patent office as well. And if somebody writes a patent for that, you can believe that the next day, the R&D of everybody else is working on the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think Canon photographers waited around a long time for Canon to do mirrorless and do it well.
Yeah.
First one, but they got it right. They got there. So and that Sony camera, I think, is a $6,000 camera. So
not cheap.
Canon's business isn't going to fail because they're not selling $6,000 cameras. Like they might sell 50,000 of those cameras, maybe. Right? They're not selling millions at all. And so if you ask me, do I want the features in R1? Sure. Well, I paid $6,000. No, it's not for me.
I would say put another 2 on that.
What's that?
Another $2,000 on that.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it is, okay, cool set of features, and in 2 to 4 years, it'll be in an R6, R5 level camera. Then, yeah, now I'm interested.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's what happens. It trickles down. So
It usually does. It takes a while sometimes, but
so yeah, it's one of those things. You know, if you interview, and say, would you like this? Sure. Would you like this? Yeah. Would you like that? Would you pay $6,000 for? No.
well, see, I would be the idiot that most likely not probably would. Like I am seriously interested in the R1 still, but
I think we're looking at 8,000 to be honest.
Yeah, 8 to 10, I would think, for the R1.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not worth it or anything like that. I'm just like financially, for me, I'm not going to buy a $6,000 camera.
And that's why I earlier said that I'm considering not going for the R1 and actually taking the massive price drop on the R3 and go with that one. That one of the nice things with the mirrorless is that they're rather adaptable via software updates. So I can see a lot of improvements that are in an R1 trickling down via software updates to an R5 Mark II and an R3. And again, should my very first mirrorless camera be an R1? I mean, honestly, the R3 is a pretty powerful tool already, and if I can get it for 2,000 or 2,500 after the R1 releases, I think that might be a more logical step for me. It's not like I'm out there making a living out of photography.
Yeah, it's hard to make money in photography, that's for sure.
It's like the R5, you know, because it has like an SD card slot still, obviously. It has a CF card slot as well. When the price drops for them, for me, it's very tempting because I use SD cards. I don't use CF cards a lot. And it makes sense to use existing equipment that I've got rather than spend a fortune on these new cards. And if the R5 is going to drop in price significantly, the only thing that has been disappointing is these weird, you know, firmware releases where they keep saying they're going to, you know, well, we were hoping they were going to reduce that 30-minute record limit, but they're still crippling us with that hammer, you know. It does look like they're not going to get rid of that 30-minute limit. Looks like Dan's just gone.
Yeah, he'll be back. His dog probably chewed something.
Yeah, his dog probably chewed something.
No, it wasn't a dog. It was just a tab, and Firefox crashed.
All right.
Okay, now I'm at the top, and you're at the
Yeah.
I'm promoted.
No, I got my own row.
Got your own row. What
I've got a list of questions from people if you want to go through them.
Oh, we got more.
Let's do that.
So, all right, Dan, you probably know this the best. Is the 60 to 600 a good lens?
Yes, a significantly upper level lens that I was very careful of staying away from for a long time because I figured with that much zoom, there is just no way it can be a good lens especially for action photography. And I got it for a good deal and figured, you know, I need more zoom, and went with one. And it is surprisingly tech sharp. The autofocus is lightning fast. The image stabilizer is amazing, even at 600 millimeters fully extended, fully zoomed in. And I'm very happy with it, and I'm pretty sure I'm not going to sell that lens anytime soon. I'm impressed by the colors and the contrast it renders even at 600. And for the shooting I do in a very dynamic setting at horse shows or in horse pastures or stuff, the 60 all the way up to 600 guarantees me shots that most other photographers without that kind of zoom range will miss at either the short or the long end. And depending on what kind of photography you're doing, it can be a true asset in your toolbox.
Have you not noticed any chromatic aberration at the lower end side of it? Because that's what a lot of people have been reporting on.
Possible, but again, one click in Lightroom and that's a non-question.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's chromatic aberration in 2023 is completely irrelevant unless you are printing straight out of camera. But if you are considering doing any kind of post on your computer, it's one button click and chromatic aberration is history. So is there some possible? Do I pay attention to it? Not at all.
Right.
I mean, unless you're, like if you're trying to reproduce artwork, right? Or
Whole different story.
But that's when you buy a proper macro lens, and that's why they have
Exactly
flat field of focus and all that.
Exactly. You're not going out there and doing massive macro shots or something with a 60-600. That is out there for wildlife, sports, that sort of stuff. It's not there for you to take an amazing shot of mosquito sitting on somebody's thumb. That's not the lens for that. And yes, in that field, I'm pretty sure you will see some chromatic aberration. When you try to zoom into something very closely and try to separate a leaf over a sunny background, yeah, you're going to see something, but you're going to see the chromatic aberration even in a 50 millimeter 1.0 or 1.2 at that point. And again, that takes me back to one click in Lightroom and chromatic aberration is irrelevant.
I mean, in most of my photos, I'm not trying to put the viewer's eyes in the corner. Right?
Yeah.
That goes back to, we were talking about lighting, and you get this, and of course you guys understand this, but that sense of what's my final photograph going to look like and what's the viewer going to see. It's like, where am I going to put in the viewer's eyes? His eyes going to go from there to there, and so that's where like chromatic aberration in the corners or a little bit of pincushion distortion in the corners doesn't really. It's rare, like that is going to matter.
Yeah, we're most likely going to crop a little bit in post anyway, so my corners are most likely gone.
Right, Mel Shearer, does anyone know if Canon will build an EF version of the 800mm lens?
An EF?
They will not. That would be the dumbest business decision Canon has made in a very long time. That's just like saying, is NVIDIA coming out with new graphic chips for the 1000 series graphic cards? No, we are not upgrading a 1 decade old graphic card. And we're not putting money in research and development for that. We're not moving backwards.
Yeah.
No more new lenses will be released.
It's sad that they're probably going to discontinue. Well, they already have started to discontinue some of the EF lenses.
Yeah.
So they're going to obviously support them probably for about 5 to 10 years, and then that'll be it, really. I would have thought. Another question that someone did ask, actually, further down the questions, how long do you think Canon will support digital SLRs? I think maybe 5 years, maybe.
Depending on, I'm quite sure I can see them phasing out support for Rebels and 2-digit EOS cameras pretty soon. I can see them supporting the single-digit EOS cameras for a while.
Yeah.
5 to 8 maybe, especially the higher-end single-digit ones.
Well, the 1DX Mark III isn't that old, is it? It's not been out that long.
No.
Well, support means repairing, right? And you don't have that inventory to work from.
And when you look at that, they are still servicing my 1DX Mark II, and they're still servicing the 7D Mark II.
Yeah. But when you have like a 5-year-old Rebel that's worth $200 on the market, and it's
you're not spending $350 to put a shutter in that.
No, it's not worth it. No. And I suspect that's what Canon did with you, Dan, when they basically gave you a refurbished camera. They thought, is it worth fixing this or just sending some, that we've got lying around?
Well, I paid for the fixing, but they didn't have the part of the guarantee 3-day turnaround. They had no choice.
Right.
They either would have had to take the part out of another camera, which at that point is stupid because then you render that body useless.
Yeah.
Or upgrade me to upgrade. They send me a refurb new model.
And this guy wanted to get to work early.
Yeah, so and stick to the. Fine by me. I'm considering sending them all my lenses too, just in case.
That's a good idea, actually, isn't it?
Just in case there's one lens missing a part and have to replace it. So.
Right, Michael Benson has got a couple of questions here.
Couple, huh? Oh god.
Well, I've got 3 actually for some reason.
Damn.
What's the difference between RF mounted glass and L glass, basically? So
Nothing, because there's
It's-
RFL glass.
what I think what he's asking is the difference between L glass and non-L glass in the RF mount, which is
Okay.
quite obvious in it, really. Better coatings,
Build structure,
sharper.
coating, and glass quality.
Yeah. The new 200 to 800 by Canon, is it better or worse than the 100 to 500 price wise? It's about $800 cheaper and non-L glass. So obviously the 200 to 800 is not an L lens. The 100 to 500 is. It's just going to have sharper optical elements on the 100 to 500 with better coatings. But if you put an extender on that 100 to 500, they're about equal in image quality, as we've already discussed it previously in this video that we're doing now. So I don't think we need to go too much into that, because if you watch this again, you'll hear me discuss the entirety of it. And if you're wondering if anyone's watching this stream, I have actually got a quite popular video discussing the 200 to 800 versus the 100 to 500. It's nearly got 10,000 views on that video. So I'm actually getting close to 1,000 subscribers, believe it or not, which
Nice.
would be nice. Again, a shout out to Dan's YouTube channel, Dr. Dan Schubert, PhD, and then the channel's called Canon Warhorse. Canon Warhorse. It's quite a mouthful, Dr. Dan Schubert, PhD.
Yeah, try to introduce yourself as that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Won't forget you, will I?
But if you spend that much time in it, you might as well use it.
Yeah.
For sure.
The last question that Michael had was, what makes the 100, 500, $800 more expensive? It's just better coatings, basically.
Yeah, better coatings, higher quality glass, and all in all, better structure plus weather sealing.
Yeah. Well, funny enough, the ordinary filmmaker put information out saying this 200 to 800 had no weather sealing. That's not true. It has weather sealing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it does. It might not be up to the same level as the 100 to 500, but nevertheless,
if you just keep some dust out, that's already a huge win.
Yeah. There's always been an issue, though. I don't know what you guys think. The zooming action of a lens, when it's raining or moisture, can water actually get into the lens by zooming back?
Technically, yes. There's, unless you have some really cool laser built in that evaporates all the rainwater right before it would cross the barrier of the weather sealing to go into the body, yes, you have a good chance of getting some moisture in there.
Yeah. That's why I suppose that's best way why it's advisable to put some sort of lens cover over your lens.
Yeah. Usually the weather sealing sounds like, hey, I can be out in any kind of weather. No, usually weather sealing is mostly aimed at dust.
Right.
That's usually what they aim at. They don't even aim that much at rain. Yeah, of course, it is spray proof with that, but our biggest threat out there is usually dust.
Right. Because I know Sigma did a video of their 150 to 600 sport lens, and
I know what you're talking about.
They blasted it with ice, water, all sorts of stuff.
They did the same for the 120 to 300 sport. And yes, Sigma's weather sealing went above and beyond past Canons in that objective and actually did a much better job at water weather sealing the lenses. But again, I wouldn't trust that without an extra actual waterproof cover on my gear.
Yeah.
I mean, do you trust a 20-cent rubber lip to protect your $12,000 worth of gear on your tripod out there? No.
No, I bring plastic rain covers in case something like that happens.
Yeah.
I watched a video, actually. It was some time ago where, the 500 f4 Sigma lens?
It
dropped
APOX? EX? I think.
It's the sport lens that they
Oh,
brought
it's a
out.
new one.
Yeah, the new one. This guy dropped it in some water, right? And completely submerged in water. The camera, I think he had a 1DX2 or something like that, and it was pretty much done, basically. And the lens was pretty much done as well, according to Sigma. But he decided, no, I'm not going to take that. And I think he took it to a local repairer who sort of looked at it, sort of dried it out and maybe replaced a few bits in it, and managed to get the lens to come back to life and be working again. So Sigma on the one hand said, no, we can't do anything. Sorry, you've just ruined your $4,000 lens or whatever you spent on it.
On their page right now, it's $6,000.
Yeah, you can get them on eBay for about $3,000, something like that, you know.
Yeah.
So keep the strap around your neck.
Oh, there's actually, I just see it. They call it enhanced dust and splash resistant structure.
Keep the lens, keep the camera strap around your neck at all times.
Yeah, protect that lens because it's a lot of money in it. Ben Lee has said, does anyone own the EOS R and have focusing issues? The EOS R I owned was quite temperamental at sometimes because it's new technology. You know, it was brand new.
Not a focusing camera.
And it was a very basic camera. It was basically like a 5D Mark IV in the mirrorless form, but they was still developing that technology. So it's understandable that the focus wasn't that fantastic, because it was their first camera they brought out in the actual RF technology. So the first one's never going to be as good as like the R6 or the R5.
Great sensor, right? If you want to shoot landscapes, portraits, great camera.
Yeah.
Birds flying through the air, not.
It went fantastically fast. I think the frames per second was quite limiting. It was free. It was 3 tracked or 6 untracked, which it's all right for normal use, like portraiture, that sort of thing. Action, it wasn't really up to it. You could do it, don't get me wrong, you could try, but it was like hit and miss sometimes,
But this is so cameras have trade-offs, right? I mean, usually when you get the really expensive one, it has everything. But like if you look at like an R8 versus an R7, and somebody says which is better, it's not better, right?
It's different.
What are you going to do with it?
I know what you're talking about. There's a guy that put a video out, R8 versus R7, and you were saying, well, they're completely different cameras, and you're absolutely right.
It's not. There's no better, right? You have to know what your application is going to be and what genre you want to shoot, and that will help guide you and save you thousands.
Did you see the comment Terrell just made in the comments?
So you want to see the 200 to 800 torture while Alaska YouTuber takes it out in the snowing with it. Yeah, I saw that video where he basically had a ton of snow all over it. Not the best idea, to be honest. Basically he left it up. It was basically snowing heavily, right? He's got this pickup truck and he's put it on the back of the pickup, right? And he's got like a cover on the top of his pickup, so it's like a flat surface. And he's got all this snow coming down, and he puts his lens on there where all snow, and then he's zooming it with the snow actually on top of the lens. And I'm thinking, why didn't you just change the camera onto the back of it inside the actual cab of your pickup truck? Why put it on all that snow? It just seemed a bit.
He doesn't want condensation on the lens, maybe. I don't know.
I was thinking, why would you do that? It don't make sense, I know he was doing an unboxing, but why not do the unboxing indoors? But I don't get it. It's not a heavy duty weather sealed lens like the 100 to 500 or an f4 500 or 600 millimeter lens. I just don't get it. Why would you do that? It just makes no sense to me. it just seemed a bit silly
to get a team for yourself.
Maybe we just have to clicks on YouTube or something like that.
Can you get enough clicks on YouTube to make it worth paying for a $2,000 lens? And you just
yes, easily. He has 10,600 subscribers.
Well, you don't earn a huge amount from that many subscribers. Normally, if you've got like 50,000 or 200,000 subscribers, you get quite a bit from that. But even 10,000 subscribers won't get you a ton of money on YouTube, unfortunately.
He also has a lot of, he gets commission off of a lot of the stuff he sells due to links and stuff. So,
well, it's the affiliate links and the sponsors that these YouTubers make their money.
Yeah.
Basically. You know, like, the ordinary filmmaker pretty much I think he got 60 people to buy the 200 to 800 lens. And that pretty much paid for the lens because he's got commission through B&H and the other one, I can't remember what it was called. And I think he was making 2% commission, and that was enough for him to pay for the lens, basically.
Not bad.
If you cover this lens in snow, it'll break. Don't do it. $1,000 YouTube.
So Terrell says he has destroyed R7 using it in the snow.
Wow. He's a very talented man.
I wonder if I could destroy a 1DX Mark II in the snow. I'm going to go give it a try.
I wonder if you could show me how to use the camera in the snow without destroying it, because that would actually be a lot more useful for me personally.
Well, if you watch this video and figure out how you destroyed it, you can avoid destroying it.
Yeah.
Take this many drugs, but not that many, because that many is too much.
Exactly. You can zoom up to 560, but if you zoom to 600 with the 2 to 800, you get snow in and it breaks.
Yeah, don't try this at home, kids.
You see this 300 2.8 lens. Now, there was a YouTuber who got a bit of dust on the lens, I think it was, and he wanted to clean it. So he decided a good idea would be to take that element off, and he used some tools to do that.
And
perfect.
That's a great approach.
Guess what happened?
Canon sold him another lens.
No, he scratched the front element with a screwdriver.
Oh.
That's what I meant with Canon sold him another lens.
Yeah, well, maybe they might be able to repair it, I suppose. I think it was a Mark 1 though, not a Mark 2. But still a lot of money down the drain.
Only one mark, not two marks.
That must have hurt.
You can buy special like lens clamp tools that go around the element. Don't try to do it with a screwdriver yourself. No.
I just pay for shipping and have Canon do it.
Yeah.
At
least if they mess up, they're obligated to repair it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, folks, I have to jet. I've got a letter from headquarters that I'm over time.
Dum.
Right.
Lovely speaking with you, and I hope we do it again soon.
Good seeing you again, Marshall. Yes, definitely. We need to get this a little bit more going again.
Yeah. Okay. New Year's resolution.
Good seeing you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year,
audience, for listening to us. Bye, everyone. Happy New Year.
Bye. Let's run through some more of these questions then.
Yeah.
Jamie, on we've got like a chat app on our actual Facebook group. There's like a chat thing, isn't we, that sometimes comes on. Does anyone here have any experience using an EFS 18 to 85 on an RF camera? You can use EFS lenses on the RF cameras, no problem. I've not experienced any problems with that at all. Felicica Lagenrut, what's a good camera setting for sports?
Yes.
I tend to just put it in aperture priority most of the time. Don't know about you, Dan.
I most of the time stay in full manual just because I need different depths of fields, because I might be 300 feet away from one jump and 26 feet away from another. So the same aperture just doesn't work easily. And sometimes the camera chooses the wrong one, especially when the light isn't too good.
Yeah.
It always depends on what kind of sport you shoot. Technically chess is a sport too. So that's why my initial answer was yes. The perfect setting is yes. Any setting is right and wrong at the same time, because it is right for one situation and completely wrong for another. Aperture priority is definitely a very good setting to make your life relatively easy. In most situations, AP mode is great.
Yeah.
And then you just control your shutter yourself, and the camera pretty much takes care of the rest. I personally always leave my ISO in auto mode as well, but I limit my ISO to usually between a 100 and 3200. In dire situations, I let it go up to 6400 in auto mode, but I don't let the camera choose anything above that.
Yeah. I try to stick to 2000 ISO whenever possible, or below, because obviously the lower it is, the better quality you're going to get.
Yeah.
But there are obviously occasions, quite often I'm having to ramp it up to 4, 5, 6,000 ISO.
Many times with the fast-moving horses, to keep the shutter speeds where I need them, I need to go up to 3200 in ISO. And on the 1DX Mark II, that is not a problem.
Yeah, they're very good sensors. Even the older, the 5Ds, no problem with them either as well. But I think a lot of people are scared about going into manual mode because they think, I don't know what I'm doing. I've done something wrong. All my pictures are not coming out quite right.
Yeah, but you most likely will do something wrong when you go in manual mode, especially the first 2 or 3 months.
Yeah,
that's how you learn.
And it helps you, especially if there's challenging situations. A good example of that is if you're doing like building photography indoor, where always the windows blows the thing out, and you have to try and get a medium to get everything evenly exposed. Then you can always take that image into Photoshop and then obviously amend your image and change it just so it looks good. So let's see what other questions we've got. We've already answered that, really, where we talked about the digital cameras, how long they're going to be supported for.
Yeah.
Martin says, I'm thinking going from the T7 to a 5D Mark II. Is this any good or would a Mark III be better?
The Mark III would definitely be better.
There's nothing wrong with a Mark II. I had it for a while. However, it's not great for video work because it's manual focus pretty much.
Yeah. The Mark II is known for its outstanding color and contrast rendition on images, which the Mark III and Mark IV were actually not capable of copying onto the new hardware. So it depends on what you're shooting. But
that's interesting. I didn't actually know that myself.
Yeah, from the circles I run in and stuff, the 5D Mark II is like the camera for color and contrast.
Right.
Out of all the ones, it supposedly still beats the 1DX Mark III as well in those. Again, in modern technology, modern times with the softwares we have, it's not a big deal. Yeah. But if you go for fine arts or something like that photography, a Mark II I would prefer over the Mark III.
Right. Deb says, I use the 7D, quite an old camera now. I don't want to spend much. What would be a comparable model?
The 7D Mark II.
Yeah. You could spend a little bit more and get the R7 or an R10 or something like that if you want to go mirrorless. There are other ones like the R50 and R100, but they're more on the budget side. I wouldn't really recommend them.
I would compare them more to the Rebel series cameras than
because the problem with the Rebels, like I had a 600D, is the buffer was terrible. It was within a few seconds I was hitting 3 frames per second.
You're full. Yeah. My very first one was the 350D Rebel. That was my first digital camera.
Right.
With like 3.4 or 3.6 frames a second.
Yeah.
And you got like a buffer for like 18 or 20, 22 images in there.
Yeah, not great, were it?
No, but I did some good photography with that at the end. Once I really knew how to use it and went into manual mode and had some better glass, I still got some pretty stunning images with that thing. I still have that camera, actually.
Matthew says, has anyone used the R3 or the 400mm 2.8 any good? They're going to be really good. They're going to be good cameras. You know, the R3 is pretty much a 1DX in the mirrorless form. It's all about budget end of the day. A 400 2.8. If you go for RF glass, you're talking what, over 10 grand.
Yeah,
It's
10,
not
11, I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah, even if you were to get a used Mark II EF version, you're probably talking about
4 to 6.
It's a lot of change. Put it that way.
But the answer is yes. It will be a stunning
Yeah.
combination to take any kind of images with.
Yeah, a lot of people have gravitated to the 200 to 400 f4 zoom lens. That
With
is
the 1.4 extender.
Yeah, with the EF. The only thing I've heard negative about it is over time the something to do with the zooming action can wear it out a little bit over time. That's the only negative thing I've heard about it.
Yeah. If I had some money, I would buy one.
It's heavy though. It's quite heavy to lump around.
Yes.
Just like the 500 f4, which is
was 120 to 300 2.8.
Yeah, but we're talking about 3.5 to 4 kilo. That's not including a camera though. You know?
Yeah, and the monopod, you most definitely need to use that thing. You not handhold that for more than 5 seconds, unless you're, I don't know, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Have you seen that strap thing that Whistling Photography have brought out? Basically, it's like a harness that goes over your shoulders, and it's like a thing that cups on top of our actual monopod. Like you have your monopod fairly short, have it on like that. It's like around your stomach area, and
it's kind of like the cheap version of a stabilizer gear, isn't it? A rig, isn't it?
Yeah. It's quite interesting. I don't think
it is. It is.
You know,
it keeps you a lot more mobile than the long monopod under you that you have to find footing for.
Yeah. Because I saw a video about it, and there's this Asian guy like practicing it and showing him it, and it looks pretty mobile. You know, quite interesting.
I was actually at some point not that long ago. I was considering getting a chest rig, a stabilizer rig.
Yeah.
Just to make life a little bit easier on me.
Yeah. Because the weight of the equipment over time can get on your shoulders, guy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty sure that's part of why I need shoulder surgery on both.
Right. Yeah. Well, we keep getting older, don't we?
You're not getting younger, that's for sure. We're not 20 years anymore. Those were the good times. You fell down 10 feet, dusted yourself off, and walked away. Now I sneezed wrong and my back hurts for 6 days.
Right. Felicia asks, does anyone know why Tamron 18 to 400mm creates a dark vignette with full frame at 16 Mark II, but a 28 to 300 does not do this? It sounds like she's using an APS-C camera on a full frame camera. When you have a bigger zoom on these APS-C lenses, some of that vignetting goes away. But when you zoom back out, it becomes quite obvious. Canon stopped people actually using EFS lenses on their full frame cameras because they put like a bump of plastic on the back that stops the mirror coming down. Some people have actually modded those lenses by literally doing surgery on the back of it.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Take the plastic bit off and then put the lens on. But you're still going to have that vignetting issue. So you're going to be cropping all your images pretty much.
Yeah, because the EFS or crop sensor lenses are meant for a much smaller circle over the sensor. So you're losing a lot.
Because I've got the Sigma DC 17 to 50 millimeter lens, which designed for crop sensor cameras.
Yeah,
But because
2.8.
Yeah, 2.8, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it fits on my full frame camera, no problem. But you do get that vignetting going off.
Yeah, you got to crop.
And not only that, I would have thought there'd be something with the optical formula that makes it not quite as sharp as, say, an equivalent full frame camera lens would be, you know. So that's something to think about as well. So what other questions we got? Any thoughts on manual adapters for adapting lenses onto RF mounts?
I don't have an RF buddy yet, so I can't say too much about the adapters there. Personally, I'm not a big fan of anything manual like focus or that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's like that RF Ariston lens that I tested, which was completely manual focus.
Mm-hmm.
You can get what they call dumb lenses, which have no autofocus capabilities at all. So what that means in theory, you can get an EF lens and negate any sort of autofocus capabilities that it might have had and put like an adapter on to fit on an RF lens, which means it just becomes like a manual lens, you know.
Yeah.
Some lenses allow that to happen, other lenses don't, because I think on a lot of EF glass, if there's no electronic connection to the RF cameras, it shuts down the aperture completely. But
you would lose the image stabilizer too.
Yeah, you can get older like manual focus lenses and get like a metal adapter and put it on an RF camera. Then you have to go into the settings of the camera and basically allow shutter release of the actual shutter to allow you to take pictures. I had to do with that with the RF 500 Ariston lens that I was testing. I had to go in the settings and modify it a little bit to allow it to work. The instructions you get with the lens tells you how to do that. It's quite easy. But that's something to think about if you want to use a completely manual lens. But it's interesting that you can get other lenses, older lenses, cheap lenses off eBay and put them on your RF lens and use them.
Yeah, it is.
Because a lot of people like to get like retro lenses, you know, with a certain...
Yeah, it's true. Old FD lenses and stuff.
Yeah.
Old size.
So there's no reason you can't adapt those. And there's other manufacturers that have created totally manual focus lenses as well. Like you mentioned one there.
Yeah, Tokino.
Yeah, many out there. We've probably touched on this before regarding imports. You said you would never touch an import.
Not on the high value range, no, definitely not.
But I've known a lot of people that have bought, you know, third party lens, you know, grey imports. In fact, I did that with the 100 to 500 Mark II. Saved a fortune on it. Never had a problem with it and sold it, you know, for a decent amount of money. So it's not to say you can't get grey imports that are like the R7, for example. I got that as a grey import and I saved £300 on what I would have paid in the UK. But it's interesting to learn that the RF 100 to 500 that I bought for £2,500 off, which was a grey import, has gone down in price recently on Amazon in the UK to about the same price.
Oh. And don't forget, if you do a grey import and order something from out of country, if Border Control picks your package for a quick inspection and they see, holy shoot, he's importing a 2,200-pound lens, we're going to tax him.
Yeah.
And they're going to pay $800 in tax on top of that. And now you have a $3,000 lens.
Yeah. A lot of these companies that do this say we will pay an import duty, but I've never known of them to do that. You see, what they do is they tend to send it in a massive container with hundreds and hundreds of lenses, hoping it'll slip through. And many of them do, but also many don't. It depends on customs and exercise. If they just, because what they do is they don't check every container. They do like a spot check on so many hundred out of many thousands, you know, and and then they obviously will contact the company and say, right, hang on a minute, you've got all these lenses. Have you paid any sort of UK taxes on this? And then that's when they get stung, you know.
Yep.
So that's something to think about. And another thing that I don't think lots of people think about is there is always the possibility if you go off, let's say you go into Africa and you take your big lens and it's a grey import, when you come back and they're checking everything that you've got, like they might do.
We need to see your receipt to prove that you took this lens out of this country with you.
Yeah, and they'll be asking, did you pay UK taxes on this?
Exactly. So
that's a possibility. It's not to say it will happen, but it might happen, you know.
It's a very good chance it happens. And over here in America, the rule is anything under $800 import, you don't pay taxes on. But once you have if you pay for the item more than $800, you have to pay import duties on it. So I have purchased a 7D Mark II for an exchange student we had living with us for a year. And I bought her a 7D Mark II as a going away gift. And that came from Japan. Right. But it was under $400. So there was no legality issue whatsoever getting it into this country.
Right. I see. Okay. Lee Everson has asked, if you could choose one lens from the past for resale or re-release, what would it be?
the Green Sigma bazooka.
You say what thing?
That would be, what was it, 200 to 800 f2.8? 200 to 500 2.8.
500, wasn't it?
Yeah, $26,000 right now on Amazon.
But there was an extender that you put on as well to make it 1000 millimeters f4, I think.
Yep. And just for that, remake that one with modern technology. Hell yeah. The annoying part about that lens was you had to carry out a humongously large and heavy battery pack to power that lens, because your camera did not have enough power to power that in any way or form.
For me, I think there's one lens that's dying to be remade, and I don't know why Canon won't do it, because it's a no-brainer. It would make them a ton of money, and that's the 400 5.6 that Canon make. It was everyone who was into wildlife would get that lens, you know. It was light, high image quality, fantastic lens. The only downside, it had no image stabilization. So a lot of people did actually get the 300 f4 and put a 1.4 extender on there because it had image stabilization.
Yep, it's a huge difference out there.
But I think if Canon was to bring out a 400 millimeter 5.6 image stabilized lens, it would fly off the shelves, literally.
I agree.
You know, everyone who's a wildlife photographer would buy that.
Yeah,
guaranteed.
Then go crazy, put a built-in 1.4 extender in that you can turn on and off.
Yeah.
And you have like the lens out there to sell.
Yeah.
Terrell just said about our gray market stuff. You also have to watch gray market, as most will not warranty the item. That's something I told you as well, Paul. There is a good chance that if you want to send your gray market imported Canon lens to Canon UK for repair under warranty, they repair it and then you get a bill.
Yeah.
And you won't get your lens back until you pay the bill.
There is an alternative, and the alternative is to ship it back to the country of origin and have them repair it.
Yeah, and by all that shipping back and forth, now you could have just bought the Canon UK lens in the first place.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of shipping costs involved.
Especially if you ship the lens out and you by yourself get that one package with one lens back, guess what package will be screened? And then ask for import duties.
Yeah.
So that's why I said I won't do high value items on gray market. Like the used 7D Mark II I bought, yeah, whatever. But I wouldn't spend more money on that anything gray market. I'd rather spend a little more at home and have full coverage.
Well, I bought a 500 millimeter f4.5 Sigma lens from Adorama on eBay, US, and obviously they posted it to me. I actually gave them a silly offer. I offered them $1,000, and I thought they'd tell me to take a running jump. They accepted my offer, and they sent it to me, and obviously it got delivered and all that. But my import cost was £300. So it wasn't quite as cheap as I thought it would have been.
Nope.
So,
and I think that goes to the point of the minimum, like the $800 we have. Anything under 800, they don't care. But then I buy a $1,000 lens in Japan or something, I also start have to pay import tax.
Well, yeah. When I was looking at this 300 2.8 lens, I was actually looking at the Mark 1, right? And I found some in Japan for around the $2,000 pound mark, something like that. But then when I looked at the cost of postage, import duty, it got close to $3,000.
Yeah, and then you just buy the Mark 3 at home.
Well, it's the Mark 2.
Oh, Mark 2, that's what I meant, sorry.
But then I actually saw it. They were around $4,000 actually at the time. But then someone sold one without the case for about $3,000, and I thought that's a steal. I'm gonna buy that like that.
Yeah, especially since you can buy the case for $70-$80 on eBay.
Really? I've seen them for about
when I look. That's Apollo. Apollo has now decided that it's time to make his online debut.
Right.
When I looked at the 500 millimeters, there were a couple without cases, and I found the case between $70 and $120 on eBay.
Really?
The original Canon case, yeah.
It's quite cheap. Because
so
the ones I've seen have been going for 500. You know.
You should check eBay USA again, I think.
Right. What else Terrell said? I've seen where Nikon wouldn't even repair it at your cost. Yeah,
quite possible.
I did a breakdown video of a program called Rip Off Britain. It's like a BBC documentary show, and they interviewed 3 people that had bought grey imports where it basically went tits up, basically. And they bought cameras that couldn't be repaired. And basically, they took a Nikon camera, took it to Nikon, and it was a grey import. And Nikon seemed to think it was some sort of counterfeit. Don't always mean it's a counterfeit just because it's a grey import. But Nikon refused to repair it, where Canon would at your cost. So it depends on the manufacturer, I think. You know, so that's basically. Grey imports, isn't it? So more questions here. So what's a good entry-level professional Canon camera to purchase?
What you're going to shoot?
They're not really said.
That's a very broad question that will get a very, very broad answer. All of them.
Yeah. I would say if you're talking professional, it's going to be a 1DX or an R3, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I would throw the R5 in the mix.
Yeah, more than capable.
Yeah. And I would also consider a 6 Mark II professional enough to be considered for that range.
Yeah, that's a good camera as well. I've always gravitated to the 5D models though, because I'll be honest with you, I've got a 6D. Now I did own, like I said, the 5D Mark II, you know, so many years ago. When I remember and feel the quality difference, the 5D just feels more solid than this R6 that I've got.
Also the EOS EF Max 6D and 6D Mark II. I was never a fan of that model. I looked at them, I played around with them, and I could not find anything endearing about him. Never understood that model.
Yeah, so I'm actually thinking about getting a used R5 when the price drops. You know, because
I think that's a good move.
Yeah.
Just like I'm thinking about getting the R3 when the 1 drops and the R3 prices drop like crazy.
Yeah.
I would definitely be hunting for a good R3 at that point, I think.
What do you think about people on the Facebook group posting pictures of multiple big lenses that they own? There's one recent picture where they put.
Can I have one, please, sir? Can I have one attention, please?
Exactly. It's like saying, "Look what I can afford and you can't."
Yeah, that's all it is. It's just, if somebody makes a post like, "Hey, it's always the same. Let's see what you have in your camera bag," and then you post the picture of yours and you have more than they have, and you don't get a response or reply or reaction. And somebody posts, "Well, I only have a little Rebel T6 and 1855 and a 55-250," and they get 500 replies to that, telling them, "Oh, somebody could upgrade and this is better and that's better." And that's why I think asking those questions and making those posts is literally just, "Please, sir, can I have one attention?
Yeah.
Look at what I have. Look at how cool I am. Look at all the gear I can carry around." Like not that long ago, a guy made a post. I don't know, was it in our group or a Canon photography group? He had like 8 different camera buddies, and he thought that it is logical to have that many because they have all different capabilities, and you bring the right camera buddy to whatever you want to shoot.
But there's only so many camera bodies, isn't there?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense that. Someone was actually giving me a lot of flack some time ago when apparently in the past I'd mentioned something about him showing a picture of all this gear he's got, and I thought it's just like rubbing it in the face of someone who can't afford it. You know, it's like there's no need. If you've got something to say about a lens and post a picture about it, and then you want to talk about the lens, what it can do, fair enough. But why do you see the need to put a picture up like this of like 6, 7, 8 lenses that would be like 30 grand, 40 grand, 50 grand, whatever it is?
Yeah, and
that no one can afford,
And I can make that picture too. I can just rent 25 lenses on lensrental.com for one day, take 2 of those pictures. I know everybody thinks I am the photographer out there because I have all the gear you can dream of. And all I actually have is a Rebel and an 18-55. Those pictures make 0 sense to me. And as a moderator of the group, I have considered removing them. I haven't, because they're technically not violating any rule.
Yeah.
But
well, I had to suspend someone recently. I was tempted to ban them because he was trying to sell a lens, on
I have
on the chat.
Suspended and kicked many people for that.
And I put a recent post up, basically saying the reasons why I don't want people selling. Because if you want to go to eBay or Amazon, sell it through that.
Yeah.
It's also not very safe to do it on the Facebook groups because you can find yourself being ripped off. There's lots of scams. A lot of the other photography groups, you can see spam regularly, and they're constantly getting taken down all the time.
Yep.
And I wanted my group to be different to that. I didn't want.
I actually suspended somebody commenting on your post. I suspended them for 7 days because they're like, "Oh, the king has spoken, I'll bow down," or some stupid comment like that. And he got the suspension hammer for 7 days to, think about what you did.
Yeah. But one thing I just ain't got much tolerance for is people selling gear when the rule specifically says don't do it.
Somebody who has been in the group for 3 years, I can see how they can forget that the rule said that. What drives me nuts is the one that joins the group yesterday, agrees to the group rules, and today tries to make 3 different for sale posts. It's also usually the ones that get instantly removed because there's no point.
Yeah. I just don't get it because you've got eBay.
Yep.
Why do you want to do it?
Well, I can see why people want to do it because eBay has gotten really greedy with their fees. Then PayPal takes a fee. So you're losing a significant chunk of the money from that sale. So I can see why people would like to do it without those fees. I get it.
But then there's Facebook Marketplace, isn't there?
Yeah, but I think they also take fees now, don't they?
I don't think so.
No.
I've had a few people turn up when I've given some away for free, and you know, sometimes I've got, I don't know, soil or something I'm trying to get rid of.
I haven't sold anything on Facebook for a year and a half or two, so I don't know if the rules have changed. I sold some old farm gates when we replaced all the old farm gates with new gates and the fence lines here.
A lot of people go on, you know, like the free ads and that sort of thing in the UK. There's something called Gumtree, you know.
Yeah.
You can always list something on there for virtually nothing, you know, and just list your items there. There's no need to do it on Facebook. And I do think it can be quite risky on Facebook, though. If someone's going to send you the money via PayPal and you're going to post it to them. And then what about those PayPal scams that you keep seeing, where they keep saying, send a tracking number, and then once we see you send it, we'll release the funds to you, which is a complete total scam, you know, because you'll never see your money. And you've just lost.
It's the same. Let me send you a check, and then you can cash the check. Yeah, right. I'm gonna fall for that. If you send me a check, you get your item in 10 days, because I'm gonna wait until the check completely clears.
The most improved Facebook member I thought I'd mention is someone called Rogis G. Talbot. Posts a lot of images of bald eagles, and I think that person's come a long way, because I have said in the past, try and get some sort of action in your shots, you know, because anyone can take a static picture of a bird, you know. It's not interesting. I think it's when you see, like a recent one they posted, had a fish in its mouth, you know, and it's like, yeah, great, fantastic.
It's better.
It's better. Yeah. There does seem to be a huge number of people posting images on the group rather than discussions about stuff, you know.
Yeah.
It's almost like a photo gallery.
That's why I made a post a while ago where I said, at least post what kind of gear you used for that.
Yeah.
You know, just don't just post a simple image, and that's not the group for it. That's if you want to do that, you go to Canon Photography, and now there you can post all the images you want. That's what that group is for.
Yeah.
If you do it in hours, I want you at least to post what gear you used and maybe what you were going for. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Terrell has said, I have sold stuff on Facebook Market, but I do it in person, public place, and cash only. Well, that's the way to do it. Yeah, it's the way to do it, mate.
Yeah. That's what I did with my farm gates. They had to come to the farm, pay me cash, and then they could take the gates they bought. It's safer.
Yeah, well, the thing with PayPal and doing it through electronic means is they can always do a cashback thing where they can make claims and get the money back. And
yeah, that's why if I do that with people I don't know, it has to be friends or family. I'm not doing it as a goods or services.
Because that's the thing. All right, you mentioned fees with eBay, and potentially with Amazon if you do it through Amazon. The thing is, you've got like guarantees with eBay that says it'll back it up if some sort of fraud is going off.
Usually eBay backs the buyer, not the seller.
There are cases where if you can prove it, let's say, for example, they return your laptop and you receive bricks. You know, you've got a bit of evidence.
But it is nearly impossible to prove. Unless you start filming from when the mailman arrives in front of your house, and you have continuous video proof of you carrying the same package and opening it up and stuff. It is difficult as a seller to prove. They usually decide with the buyer, and that's why another reason why I hate selling stuff on eBay.
Yeah. But you're right about the fees. The fees have gone up dramatically. You know.
Yeah, I remember when they started, it was like 1 or 2%. It was fine.
Yeah.
Nobody cared. Now they
Yeah.
want like 10, 12 or something percent.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Now it's sort of sell my item so expensive that I can't compete. So it's not worth it for me.
Yeah.
At that point, I just sell it to KEH or MPB or something and gets the same money, but I get it instantly. Within 5 days, I get a check, and it's all good.
Yeah, it was like that 600 f11 lens that I sold. I actually went to a camera shop. I was thinking of part exchanging it for, I think, was it 100 to 500, I think it was. But there was like a 6-month waiting time. I thought, yeah, bollocks to that.
Yeah.
So, but
No.
they still gave me the cash for the lens that I sent to them.
Yep,
You know,
that's good.
you know.
All right, Paul, I'm getting close to my afternoon photo shoot. Do we have a couple more questions we can quickly answer? I have a couple more minutes, and then I have to duck out to get ready for the shoot, set my lights up and stuff.
Let me just check the paperwork, see if we've
Yeah.
got questions on it. Right, we've got. No, you're all questioned out. In fact, we've gone through everything.
Yeah, look at us. We made it through all the questions actually.
Yeah.
How did we do that?
I don't know.
I think that's the first time we did that.
Well, it's a challenge to get people on, and I'll be honest with you, I was expecting to have Matthew Riley from YouTube channel Learn Something New 1911 to come on. He said he'd do it, and then he let me down last minute, so it's a bit disappointing.
It's annoying.
He actually has the 200 to 800 lens in his possession.
Cool.
Basically, he was asking people on his channel a question because it was making a funny noise. And I said to him, it's the image stabilizer. I used to own the 300 f4 EF lens, and it made the same noise, and I thought, well, you can turn the stabilizer off, and then you would know if it's something wrong or not, But if it is making a stabilizing noise, the 200 to 800, it's not very loud on the 100 to 500. So maybe that's something that's not being discussed.
Maybe. I did notice that the IS on Canon is usually a little louder than on the OS on my Sigmas.
Yeah, well, that's true. But I was never impressed with optical stabilizer on the Sigma lenses. When I compare them to Canon, there's a massive difference. To me, the Canon IS is 50% better than Sigma's OS.
I can't back that up by my experience, but
I
shoot different cameras, different lenses.
Yeah. Well, I've done tests with the 150 to 600 contemporary, and then I put it up against the Canon 100 to 400 Mark II, using the same focal length, because you can obviously pull it back to 400 millimeters.
Yeah.
And I just felt that there was hardly any difference to me holding it in terms of stabilization on the Sigma lens, but the Canon was like twice the more effective.
I used to have the old Bigma. You remember the 50 to 500 Sigma lens?
Yeah.
And we actually compared it. Back then, I still only had my 350D.
Right.
And we compared it on my buddy's 5D Mark III, and he had the 100 to 400 Mark I from Canon. And the 50 to 500 was at least up to par at 400, at 300, at 200, at 100. We were very surprised by that, actually.
Well, I do know that IS from the Mark I to the Mark II became twice.
Oh yeah, that's why I said we used the Mark I, so that was a much older lens.
Yeah.
I have not used any of the newer Canon lenses other than my Mark III 70 to 200, and with that lens, with the autofocus and IS, I'm definitely blown away by how quick it is and how powerful. So,
well, with this lens, the 100 to 500, it is noticeably quieter than the 100 to 400 Mark II that I had in terms of noise that comes from the actual autofocus motor. IS is hardly audible at all.
Good, very good.
So in that regard, it's a far better video lens. You know, I would say
Yes.
I would say the same is true of these f11 lenses that kind of brought out. You know, the 800 and 600. I found the stabilization, you know, for doing video absolutely amazing.
Nice.
You
That's
know,
good to know. That's good to know.
so for anyone who's considering video work, these new RF lenses actually blow the EF out of the water. But when it comes to image quality, they're not that much different. I spoke to, I don't know if you ever heard of a YouTuber called Dustin Abbott. He's
Didn't he used to have the webpage too with all the reviews?
I don't know, but he's got a YouTube channel. He's got 120,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
He's a Canadian, and he does YouTube reviews quite often.
Yeah, DustinAbbott.net. He does pretty much most of my lens purchases are based on his reviews.
Yeah, they're very good, very precise, and he does.
Yeah, very detailed.
Well,
what
he tends to do is, you know, how I'm quite a proficient person with the test charts. He tends to use the Canadian dollar, you know, as a way of determining sharpness on lenses. And what prompted me to get the 100 to 500 was when he did that test of the 100 to 400 Mark II, and he compared it to the new RF 500 lens. And while it was not hugely different, it was marginally sharper, just marginally.
Yeah.
But it was more or less the video functionality that I was interested in terms of how quiet it was, because the 100 to 400 was quite noisy, in my opinion. You know, you could actually hear it when you did, you know, recordings. On this, I can't hear it. You know, it's that quiet. So I think there are advantages with RF lenses. While I've criticized previously RF glass for not being as sharp as I would like it to be, because I even asked Dustin Abbott this question, and I said to him, RF lenses don't appear to be that dramatically better than the EF lenses in terms of sharpness. And he agreed. He says, you know, to be honest, you're actually correct on that. Then they're slightly better, but not dramatically better. So that doesn't take away anything from EF glass. You know, EF glass is fantastically sharp and nice.
I tried to post the link to his webpage in the comments, but the live stream program won't let me post a link.
Right. Hang on. No, well, I don't know why that would happen. I'll have to look into the settings, see if there's something I can do. But yeah, I do like Dustin Abbott. He's got some really
a lot
videos.
Yeah, even if I take even if I modify it, it won't let me post the link in any shape or form. Sorry for that, guys. I tried.
Let me see if I can do it. I don't know.
Yeah.
If it's...
Yeah, there you go. You can.
Maybe it's a, you know, admin thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but guys, if you want to check out Dustin Abbott, go to the link.
Definitely, absolutely worth it.
He's got a YouTube channel as well.
Facebook, Getty Images, Instagram, YouTube, Flickr, 500px. He's on everything.
And what's interesting about Dustin is if you leave a comment on his channel, he will reply to you.
Yeah.
You don't get that with the other YouTubers.
No, most of them will ignore you completely.
And that's another thing. I mentioned Gordon Camera Labs in a video I did when I was criticizing the Ordinary Filmmaker, where he'd said he wasn't interested in a live stream. He sees no value in doing a live stream. And I said to him, well, a live stream, it's not just about helping people. It's not about getting views. It's about giving correct information out to people. And but he doesn't see it like that. He sees it like a waste of my time. I'd rather do a video. And he's always complaining about the fact that he doesn't get many views compared to Tony Northrup or Jared Power. and he's got 220,000 subscribers.
That's crazy.
And I'm thinking, I would be over the moon if my channel had that many subscribers.
Yeah.
So
Should take 1K off of it, and I would be happy.
Well, what are you moaning about? And he basically refused to come on the live stream, basically. But he's more than happy to go on to the Ordinary Filmmakers channel and have an interview with him, though.
Yeah.
It's a bit two-faced,
It is what it is, Paul, I'm really sorry. I got to go get set up for the photo shoot.
All right, no problem, mate.
There will be images to prove later on. Maybe tomorrow I will post some. See how it works for the first time using 2 Alien Beasts in the setup. There's 2 different softboxes. So looking forward to trying that out and sharing my experience and the results and see what people think.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having it again. And we should aim for another one next year.
Well, you say next year, yeah? Tomorrow.
Yeah, let's see, maybe end of January or something, or early February. We can aim for another one.
Yeah, well, it's been a challenge to try and get people on.
I know.
That's why I did a video where I said I wasn't going to do it again, but I thought, well, maybe I'll give it another try.
Yeah, and if it's just us two, then it's just us two. It is what it is, We're still having fun.
Don't you find it amazing, though, when I put a post up and I don't get loads of people interested?
And then nobody shows up.
I know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right, Paul. Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to Terrill. And thank you for sticking with us throughout pretty much the whole thing and commenting and asking questions. That was really nice. We highly appreciate your participation here.
Yeah.
And Happy New Year to you too, Terrill, and to everybody who's watching now or in the future. I hope you, had a Happy New Year.
Yeah.
But yeah, Happy New Year, and we'll see you next year.
All right. Thanks, Dan, for coming.
Thanks for having it, Paul. I appreciate it. You have a good one. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye. Right, ladies and gentlemen, I'll say a few things before we finish. I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who has been watching the live stream. I will try and get some more of these done if I can get some more people interested in coming on. I don't like doing these videos if it's just me, because I think it's more interesting if people are talking and we're basically bouncing ideas off each other. So a big thank you for everyone coming. Remember, guys, please subscribe to this YouTube channel if you can. I'm getting very close to the 1,000 subscribers, which means I can finally monetize this channel, and hopefully more and more people will get to see the content. Don't forget to check out that review that I've done of the 200 to 800 RF lens versus the 100 to 500. I haven't tested the lenses in person, but I've done a summary of what both lenses offer, so you can make an informed decision whether which one is better for you, or whether you feel that you've already got the 100 to 500 already, and maybe you want to use an extender with it to give you the same sort of capabilities that the 200 to 800 gives you, albeit 100 millimeters shorter. Obviously, big thank you for everyone who's been watching. One last question that Terrell did mention regarding the dock. Yes, the Sigma dock is a good thing to have. It allows you to modify your lens and change the various options in the customizations of customization mode 1 and 2. And you can change the focus limiter, the focusing speed, make it faster or slower or more accurate. It's a great thing to get. So yeah, certainly recommend getting the Sigma dock. I actually still own it, so if I get another Sigma lens, I can always use it with it. So again, a big thank you for everyone coming to the YouTube channel. Please remember to like the video, this live stream. Not many people get to see the live streams, but hopefully you watching it all the way through will help people see it. And a big thank you. And hopefully this has been informative, and I'll see you in another one. Have a nice day, and bye-bye. I'm in forest looking for some exciting images of birds. Let's just see what we can get.